Happy Holy Day, Moors.
Islam, happy Holy Day.
Welcome to the House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. In practice, we are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science. An awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, we are proud to present once again Grand Sheikh, National Grand Sheikh, Taj Tarik Bey. Let's receive him.
Subject matter tonight. Can you hear me well? Trust that you can. We're going over the Emancipation Proclamation and essentially its misrepresentation in history. Because as we were talking earlier, a lot of the people over the generations have felt secure in relationship to the Emancipation Proclamation under the misrepresented concept that the Asiatics of North America were freed by Abraham Lincoln and his administration during the Emancipation Proclamation. And furthermore, there's this general misconception of the Emancipation Proclamation coming through the legislative processes of the Republic by due process law by the Congress or those persons claiming to be Congress representing the Republic at that time. So we're going to talk about certain facts that you need to know. And a lot of concepts that are molded today have been molded deliberately from a political perspective, you know, that's its root. Now for your purpose and for our purpose is we're going to correct a lot of those misconceptions because our people are most damaged by it, all right? So I'll turn this light out just a minute and Tam, we're going to go over this and it would be well, do you have a mic at your spot?
Yes.
All right.
Islam.
All right, Islam, can you read this and share this with the people? And at the same time, if you choose to, interject.
Okay. The Emancipation Proclamation of 1862. The Emancipation Proclamation issued by executive order in North America by Abraham Lincoln on date 22 of September in 1862 during a commercial mercenary war. This infamous commercial mercenary war has been deliberately misrepresented in reconstructed history in North America as the Civil War. The fundamental truths about the Europeans' commercial mercenary war of the early 1800s must be viewed and reviewed with the acknowledged truth and knowledge that all social, economic, and political acts and machinations issued at North America, past and present, must be placed into true historical perspective. This is especially holds true for the true Al-Moroccans, Americans. Truths and facts to consider and take into account. Europeans are not Americans. Although this false claim has been, with connotative fiction, promoted, claimed, and written into history books. Number 2, America is a continent and not a country, although this false claim has been, with connotative fiction, promoted, claimed, and written into history books. Number 3, the main and major body politic of Europeans operating as government in North America are alien colonists and descendants of colonist Inquisition invaders, and did not come unto our shores as friendly or as lawfully naturalized citizens.
Now,
Islam.
these 3 points, and there's others, and of course, if I had more time, I was going to interject them, but you know we were over there going over some things over there about the house. And so I didn't do that. Now, this consideration, you know that most of the people, when they're reading the history books, in particular about the commercial mercenary war that they've been told is the Civil War, these things have not been taken in consideration. Are we clear? And so after generations, people forget that the Europeans are not Americans, and many of the Aboriginal people, through training, socialization, and social engineering, have been for generations calling the occupying Europeans Americans to their own peril and dilemma, political, economic, otherwise. And this causes much confusion when the people seek remedy in a lot of the economic, social, and political problems that we experience as a people today at North America. And most of the arguments that ensue because of these activities of European Inquisition operations are disguised under the subtitle social arguments of racism and prejudice and people's skin color, which is a diversion from the real truth that the people are under occupation. And so that's the real source of your problems, not whether or not Europeans like you. You're under political colonial occupation. It must be remembered at all times, with all due respect, and this has nothing to do with personal feelings from Europeans to you or with you to them. It has nothing to do with the fundamental humanities of humanity, the humanitarian concepts. And so people have a tendency to look for the moral and ethical, how would you say, activities or tendencies of people, and it confuses them when the Europeans who operate at North America often show a high level of arrogance and tendency to abuse other people and to question other people's identity and things like that. And it never dawns on them that these arguments that the Europeans make in questioning other people's identity is to divert you from ever paying attention to the fact that you should question theirs. And it's also predicated on the fact that if they keep you diverted with these arguments about other immigrants and people crossing the borders and stuff like that, you forget the fact that they are the alien. And that the problems that the people have had in North, Central, South America, and the islands come from them and their descendants under colonial inquisition operations and conquistadors. Both are the same. Both origin is conquest, has nothing to do with them being brought onto the land through any lawful process of the people of the land under the sovereign authority of the people of the land, but under colonial inquisition operations. And in order to divert the Aboriginal people's attention from these realities and facts as to real reason why they have poverty among targeted people in North America is because of inquisition operations. And logically, it necessitates them reconstructing history. So people's concepts of the period of Reconstruction is incorrect too. Because the concepts that most people are having with what is called the period of Reconstruction at North America, their mind is the war and building, rebuilding buildings and stuff like that. It never dawns on them that they were reconstructing history. Burning books and reconstructing books. Changing names of people, lands, and areas, etc. And all of their political acts are predicated on enforcing unum sanctum policy and the doctrine of discovery, essentially factually true and researchable by any scholar, anyone that really knows real world history. However, those things are not emphasized because the narrative has been these Americans are fighting each other, and so they call it the Civil War, because the Civil War implies that people of a nation state are fighting each other for some political cause or purpose. And what people forget is that these are Europeans battling other Europeans for spoils of a conquered and occupied people who are later to be deceived into thinking that they are U.S. citizens under the 14th Amendment to muddy the water when actually they are the target. They are the spoil. In law, in operations, governmental operations of conquest, such persons, not unlike any other product, are referred to in law as booty and prize. Write that down.
That's right.
And don't forget that. And so a lot of the disrespect and social economic abuses are imposed upon the people of the land. And the reason why even the German Dutch masters of Europe coined the brand systems of Negro, black, colored, Indian, etc., is to create schism among the people of the land. That's to divide them against each other. And to disconnect the people themselves from a right of claim to the land. In other words, they could not physically, although they murdered millions, they could not physically disconnect the people from the land, although they got rid of a lot of them. So the disconnect is intended with miseducation and misrepresentation. So this is where you get the Dutch masters' operations of brand systems. And also the false concept that was born out of European conquest, Inquisition operations on the planet, of calling us Indians. And these things must be also taken into account in these matters for us to bring some resolution to the social economic problems that we have today, for they're certainly tied together. The first of the Moors, the Almoravians, so understand, let's make this very clear. Not been practiced with our people is to identify parties, not colors, parties, political parties. Controversy, European colonial inquisition operations upon the world, initiated in the contemporary world under what is called the Spanish Inquisition. Fact, these are facts that I'm presenting to you that are researchable. And then I'll go into general concepts on how the proclamation is presented in history, and then present interjections of corrections for us. Are we clear? Yeah. Dr. Naila, give her the phone, the microphone.
Islam. I'm thinking far out here, but I'm just, you said to interject, so I'm going to interject.
Yes, please do.
My far outness.
Because it's more, and I'm going to interject this. It's more effective for the listeners and the people when that is done, because it gives them a chance to think. Because a lot of times we're saying things, and people are taking it in, and there's other context very important that can be interjected, because the purpose is for them to really comprehend what this is.
I was thinking when you were talking about the Reconstruction period and what history has taught us versus what it actually was.
Yes.
And I was having a flash of the intertestamental period, the so-called 400 silent years allegedly between the Old and New Testament.
Yes.
When we know they were writing and creating. Is there possibly any correlation between
I thought you were going to say that. Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Well, continue if you want to add.
Yeah, well, they call this the so-called 400 silent years when God, air quote, allegedly was silent. But we know that during that period, there was a lot of meetings and writings and creating going on of a narrative, of a so-called historical narrative. So it popped in my mind when you were talking about the Reconstruction of, the so-called Civil War actually being reconstructed, how, a lot of times we're saying, where is, quote unquote, America in the Bible? All over the place.
Exactly, including the 7 cities, which are in Asia.
Okay.
You know the conversation we were having earlier?
Yes.
In your basement?
Yes.
Let me interject this to you. Before I came down, I was digging in my boxes because I was doing work at the house, at the apartment. And I was digging some of my old notes of actually years ago, stuff that I was teaching in Harlem when we started the history school. And one of the notes that I picked up that correlates synchronicity, what you just brought up, I'd like to share with that. So I brought it and I said, well, let me bring this because Dr. Naila might be interested in this. So, and it correlates with really just what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah, give me a minute. Synchronicity. Really? I think I might have left it in the car. But anyway, I'm going to bring that back with me. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Yep. It was all wrinkled. Yeah. And I was thinking, because I wanted to share this with you. And I want to share this with people in general, because they're concepts of what has been presented as Christianity to our people in North America, which is at the spearhead of the social re-engineering and the connotative presentment of what they thought they were getting in the name of religion. And it harmonizes exactly and correlative with what you just said. You know, so these are some of my old notes, and I just pulled this, and I was actually looking for something else, and I pulled this out. So let me take this down here, because Doc might be interested in this, right? And actually, it's dealing with, I'll show you, hold on. One is, as they write a reconstructed book of the 1800s on the matter of Yeshua, who they call Jesus. And this is Jesus in India. Now, scholars know that the tomb for the one they call Jesus in Srinagar. And so does people who get their ecclesiastical degrees, though they never teach it. And so he didn't die on the cross like they said. He was rescued. The other deal of it is, the Europeans reconstructed the Septuaginta and translated into what we know today as the Bible. And the first of those translations and transliterations were given in honor of Prince James, not King James, he was Prince at the time. And the honor that is given commonly in the churches to Jesus, to the slaves, persons held to servitude, and persons who the European conquistadors and conquerors who came to America, who projected and enforced this on the Aboriginal people of Algonquin Moorish descent, who they branded as Indians and tribal Indians, this is true and the record. And I'll share this with you. I won't go into all the details, but I'm going to share this with you, Dr. Naila. The honors that they give commonly in church to Jesus was given to Prince James, assigned by the Lord to rule in King of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, etc. You know, and so the same preachers that promote the Jesus dynamics to the persons who they have tagged as slaves at North America and Indians, that they forced the Constantinian order on in the name of Christianity, this was their instruction. And so a lot of the early instructions of the people that becomes the common intimidated mentality that they have of not questioning is because they were both tortured and forced to accept worship to the popes of Rome and to Prince James, who's later called King James. And of course, because the first permanent settlement after they murdered Matuaka, who they also rewrite in history as Rebecca and Pocahontas, who was a potentist under Wahasuncook, who was a Moorish Shakun of the Powhatani Confederation, dealing mostly like when you deal with the some of the Nanacook, like the Delaware area, Nanacook in this area actually, Lenape, etc., and down to the Anayamwea, which part of my family is that they call Cherokee. And also they call us chocolate people, which is Choctaw. That's French for chocolate people. That's not really a people, So they call us Indians. They're reconstructing history and also dividing us against each other. So many of us grow up and start claiming to be Indians to get recognition when North America is not India and we're not India. And including the brothers and sisters of what they call the Mohammedans from Hindustan, Sindh, and Peru, that they call India today. That's not India either, on the other side. And even though a lot of the people are used to Europeans and the reconstructed history of calling Sindh India. That's not India, and they're not India, and we're not Indians. It's part of the reconstructed history. So in line with what you were saying, Dr. Naila, yes, that's reconstructed history. And these concepts and misconceptions must be cleared up with the people in order to bring remedy to the people today. And while it is known by scholars and historians, it's not in their social, economic, and political interest to tell those truths that the history was reconstructed, not so much the buildings. You know what I mean? And also for the people to bring remedy to current events. So we're going to go through the Emancipation Proclamation, and thank you for reminding, because I want to leave some of these notes with you, and you can go over them and put them in context. All right? So I pulled this actually from under my bed, out of a box this morning. I said, I think I'll bring these down and show these to Dr. Naila, just as a note, because what I wanted to do and what I intend to do when I go over it, I'm going to put these in context, etymological context, because when they translated it, they interject Jesus in knowing that it's not Jesus, if you can go a point, stuff like that. So thank you for bringing that up. This is why it's important, because this information needs to be shared with our people. But again, there's so much to say, so much to do, and your interjections are proof of that. And our conversation in the basement is also proof of that. So thank you for that. And please don't hesitate to do that, because it really helps the people. Because a lot of questions, some, because you're a scholar yourself, and so a lot of your questions come from your knowledge and your skills, and your studies. And so a lot of the questions will be meaningful and intelligent, because some people don't know what questions to ask, even though they're curious. So I just want to reiterate that. Right on. So let me give this to you right now, because it's really a note. Give her this. And copy that.
We'll make a copy.
Share it with Brother Isaiah,
Okay.
and also with Tam,
Okay.
because it would be very helpful. And in the future, from a note position, stuff like that historical documentation would be well, even in the short conversation we had, good brother, earlier when you sat down and talked about your family, because they don't have scholarly background. So scholars have this knowledge, and all they need to do is share it with people. It would liberate a lot of people overnight. Yes. Because people are claiming, and it's not disrespect to them. Our people are claiming to be Christians because it was imposed on them, but they don't know that the people who imposed it on them themselves are not Christians, they're Constantinians. But Christianity is used as a front for European colonial conquest on the planet Earth. And the more you do research, the more, and really, sometimes you really don't have to do deep research, you just have to be honest and go look for it, it'll come to you, it'll drop right in your lap. The old statement, seeking you will find. Well, truthfully, if you seek, it finds you. That's the truth how it works. Dr. Naomi.
So, just another interjection. When I was coming out of the fog, if you will, of Christianity,
The dogma.
the dogma, I remember having a conversation with my then overseer with regard to what I was doing, what was I teaching that was creating such a stir here, and why were people leaving. And I began to share some things with my overseer, and he happened to actually have ministry in India. And I began to share with him how, Jesus, Yeshua was, did die on the cross, but also, but necessarily, was in other places. And one of the places he was India, and that I understood that his bones, or people pay a lot of money for his, to come to a certain place where they're able to see apparently his alleged grave and so forth. And so all while I'm saying these things, he says to me, and he never,
he would never reject what you say.
He never rejected what I said, but what he said to me was that, he said, daughter, God has a unique way of dealing with you. And he said to me, you have to understand, he said, Jesus, he didn't say Yeshua, he said, Jesus only took 3 to the mount.
Yes.
Transfiguration. And so what he was telling me is that what you're sharing with me is true. This is not something that you are supposed to convey to you're not supposed to share this with the masses. And I said, with all due respect, I said that was my commission, to stop lying and tell the truth.
Yes, and the deal with it is, and even when statements like that have been traditionally made, what they don't do is give you the whole truth. The Pope of Rome commanded that this is not to be shared with the masses. That didn't come from the divine Most High. But the implication, they leave out certain statements, so the implication is, the God in heaven don't want you to reveal all of this because everybody didn't go to the mount with Jesus type thing. What it really means is all these people who've been presenting Jesus to you are not his friend and never were. And that they've been using Yeshua under the code name of Jesus as a front to perpetrate the order of Christ, which is the Jesuit order, who simply used the Christ degree as a front for conquest purposes. And this is back to even in the Septuagint in the Bible where it says those who claim to love God, Lord principle, they say Lord, 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 but their hearts are far removed. Including the order of the priesthood who would use Yeshua's name as a front for the people to put their guard down. While they know the truth themselves, they hinder the common people or the little ones from entering into that truth. Essentially, what that implies is the secret societies that they evolve to protect their self-proclaimed godship and their claimed elite class who are really unworthy and were enemies and always have been of the prophets, but use the prophets' names to entrust or to gather or gain the trust of the people when actually they're enemies of the prophets and enemies of the people. And that is actually what has become the norm. Those processes of misrepresentations, impersonations, changing of names of people, of the living, of lands, etc., are the practice from that day to this very day, which are at the root of the nature of the politics of connotative linguistics that we often discuss. And again, that's the very nature of even why we're doing this class tonight on the Emancipation Proclamation, which is the implication of freeing a people who were not freed. And including the misconception of it being an act of Congress under due process of law under the Republic when that was not the case and is not the case. The concept that the people under the jurisdiction of the United States, the Moors, Aboriginal people who were put to servitude in service to the popes of Rome and the European conquerors of the Western Hemisphere, that they were free under the jurisdiction of the United States, and that was not true either. They were liberated conditionally as war fodder in certain states, which will be named state territories, for the purpose to be used as fodder against the opposing sides for that purpose, and not in all of the corporate states. And that fact stand true then, and it stands true today. All right? And so when you understand the real history that the Emancipation Proclamation has been and is falsely presented and represented in history, your views logically will take a different course. And you will also recognize the necessity that things that were not done then must be done now. And certain positions that have been taken by certain men and women over the period of years, you will understand them in context of their time period, including some things mentioned by the sister, whose name is also misrepresented, which I'm going to do a subject on her later, because her name is totally not what you think it is. And that is the one who they call Harriet Tubman. You know, which is another example of them changing names. So I'm not going to get into that because it'll create interest and people want me to get into that, and I'm not going to get into that right now because we'll get diverted, as you can see. Anyway, her first name starts with an A. I'll just tell you that much. And she was an Edo. And Harriet Tubman is a total fiction. That name is. Not the person, that name is. Including like Dan Banneker. That name is a total fiction. You know, so they've done the same thing with named places, etc. So let's get into the Emancipation Proclamation as presented to the masses, and we will interject corrections. All right? All right. Emancipation Proclamation. Now, this is generally a synopsis of what's presented in the school books and by scholars, particularly in Western Hemisphere, and thus promoted in school systems and promoted to the children by people who thought they were free, etc. But I'll make some notes in here because even when they present history, they'll tell certain truths, but they'll not complete concepts, so you don't recognize that the people really weren't liberated. And I also want to interject this, because this is very important. The concept of the manumission of so-called slaves. Now, understand the word slave actually comes from Slovakian, and it's an identity. It belongs to Europeans, not to the Asiatics that were subjugated at North America. We were not slaves. We were bound freemen. That must be comprehended. So the Moors, who were branded Negro, black, colored, Indian, Latinos, etc., were not slaves, but they're written in history as slaves. They were bound freemen. The reconstructed history calls them slaves. All right? That's another thing that must be known by you, and logically you must start changing your language to clean up the generations who've been damaged by this misinformation and misrepresentation. So, truth into context is what I'm presenting to you. The dissolution of connotative linguistics, which is an engineering not accidental, it's weaponizing language. All right? So, Emancipation Proclamation is a document that consists of 2 executive orders. We won't get into that. I was going to define that for you, but I expect you to do that in your everyday research, and particularly you scholars Moorish Americans who need to understand this, who already know this. But for the listeners, keep that in mind. Do not forget that the Emancipation Proclamation is 2 parts of executive orders from the executive branch of government and not an issue from Congress. Are we clear? Are we clear?
Clear.
All right, so let's get that clear from the door. Now, so they were issued by the United States President Abraham Lincoln. Now, let's make another point clear. Abraham Lincoln was run on the political platform of the United States Service Corporation that was registered in France by Benjamin Franklin in 1754 that was promised the enumerated governmental contracts under treaty agreement with the negotiations between Great Britain and the Moroccan Empire, which was being conquered. Are we clear? The Western Hemisphere of North America is the heartland of the Moroccan Empire, i.e. the Americans, who are now coming under occupation by the Europeans. So do not get it twisted in your mind when you call them Europeans Americans. They're not Americans. They conquered the Americans. Are we clear? And keep in mind that America's not Indians. So they collude and corrupt the history by interjecting these connotative names that actually did not exist before European construction. As humans, Indians did not exist. It is a social construct by European colonists. There's no such thing as India. And there's no such thing as Indians. Are we clear? Including the reconstructed maps where you'll see Sindh called India today. That is not India. That's Sindh. And at one time in the ancient world also called Peru. All right? And just like you see the Sindh River, that's the name of the land and the people. In reconstructed history, as Europeans in Britain occupied that area, then they started calling it India. About 2,000 years ago, a little bit more than 2,000 years ago, the Moors under the Mauryan dynasty, and this is research for you, Mauryan Nanda Gupta dynasty of Sindh called the area Hindustan. And so the people that you're calling Indians are Hindustani. Are we clear? And that is the true name. There's no such thing as India. The Europeans in their reconstructing history called Hindustani today, India. And they write it on the maps because they're reconstructing history, making claims that are not true so they can make claims on the land. Are we clear? So let's get that clear. So it's important to understand that the Inquisition operations on the planet is renaming peoples and lands to solidify their conquest of the peoples and lands. Are we clear? After generations, the peoples of the land start agreeing to these names, which are actually tags and brands, and after a few generations, they don't recognize that they're brands. When they accept the brands, it automatically creates by default a jurisdictional claim by the Europeans who created these names. Are we clear? All right. A little bit of run-on, but necessary. All right? All right. So here we go. So the first Emancipation Proclamation issued by Lincoln on September the 22nd of 1862 declared the freedom of all slaves in any state of the Confederate States of America, as did not return, and these are the states and their operatives who did not return to the Union control. Are we clear? By January of 1863, January 1. Now keep in mind, so the proclamation is essentially freeing the persons who were designated as slaves in the territories of the states that did not agree to come back into the Union. Keep it now, so I'm going to put this in context, which is not in this note. The Congress for the Republic, United States, adjourned sine die March the 27th of 1860 against Abraham Lincoln and the administration, i.e., they dissolved the United States as a political body politic. It was a coup d'etat, and not so much the Congress adjourning sine die as written in history. This is again context in which this must be taken. Are we clear? So the United States as a political forum stopped existing March the 27th of 1861. You must take that into context that the people have been taught since that time that the United States is a country still existing since that time. Because that has been taught and they've been operating as if that is true. It was not true and is not true to this day. It is dangerous logically, politically, and economically for the people of the land not to know that fact. So since March the 27th of 1861, the people have been taught that the private corporation in France that had the enumerated contracts to do business at North America and was bankrupted, its owners have been promoting that corporation as the country since that time, which is why the masses believe that the United States is a country. And because they were conquering America, the continent, with the heartland of the Moroccan Empire being North America, they started also promoting the false concept that America was a country, to blind you to the Inquisition operations. This is why in one sentence they'll say America as a country, next sentence they'll say United States as a country. And to groove that into the thinking processes of the people. It grooves it into the language, and the people themselves start projecting that, and they pass it to the next generation, which is why the present generation is geographically illiterate. Also, relative to the geographics, they're also illiterate to the real politics and illiterate to their own pedigree, and the fact that their suffering is not racism, their suffering is Inquisition colonial occupation. And all legislation since that time in breach of the treaty that supersedes the Constitution is operatively put in place under color of authority, color of law, color of operation, prima facie exercises to steal the people's birthright, including the Europeans' practice of falsely calling themselves Americans, including the Europeans' practice of calling America the country, including the fact of them referring to themselves later on an official basis after the Whiggamore Party split. 1854 start seriously promoting themselves as white people or free white people, where the commonality of European colonists who operate at North America beginning to be called white people, having nothing to do with skin complexion, but has everything to do with them claiming sovereignty over the land. Because white people, or free white people, designates the sovereign and the lords of the land, or the heirs of the land. That's what that actually means in law. And so logically, the people not knowing that these terms taken on by people in social engineering have political implications and purposes, and then not being taught jurisprudence and history as partners. In other words, like your left arm and your right arm, your left leg and your right leg, law and jurisprudence, or what you call jurisprudence and history, chronology of human events, go together. They are not separated and were never supposed to be separated. These were political activities that were deliberately instituted, particularly after the European conquest of the Moors and the fall of the Red House, January the 1st of 1492. And so the Emancipation Proclamation by celebration was issued, or or what you would call, was activated again with its claim for the European corporate operations to come back into the Union January the 1st. Those dates, those correlations were not accidental. All right, go ahead, Tank.
Yes, now,
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, get the mic.
Yes, where will the Northwest Ordinance fall into that?
Yeah, now, let's look at this as dates.
Okay.
All right, this is very important. The final, now keep in mind the Moorish Empire is on both sides of the globe. North America is the heartland of the Moroccan Empire. The Northwest Ordinance is instituted on 1787. The Northwest Ordinance is also called Northwest Territories. It's called also the Ordinance of 1787. And the Ordinance of 1787 is essentially the agreement, the political agreement, whereas the assemblers of government at that time agreed to how the government operations would be executed under a republican form. That was adopted after 1786, when the treaty between the Moroccan Empire and the British operatives was finalized. So the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which is the longest running political treaty between Morocco and the United States, which is a colony operations of the British operations, in agreement, because the Moorish Empire was falling, so that where you get the treaty. So the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between Morocco and the United States as written in history, then the Northwest Ordinance, or the Ordinance of 1787, then early 1788, the agreement was for the Europeans to honor the treaty and the constitutional principles coming from Muslim law, which is the Constitution for the United States and the establishment of its republican form of government and the protection of the Aboriginal people, i.e. the Moors. That's essentially what the ordinance is all about. So it makes distinction on the operations of government here being republic and to protect the interests of the Aboriginal people, and that the order of government would protect the Europeans who were agreeing to treaty operations, etc., under Constitution. So you have the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1786, Northwest Ordinance, or Ordinance of 1787, then the Constitution with its final ratification, 1789. And so you see the sequence there, but interject.
So was the Northwest Ordinance built upon the Moorish Emperor Davan?
Everything was. You got to put. This is back to why it's necessary for us to put these things in context.
That I was kind of lost in that, in between that. Okay.
No. Some people are if they don't have some background.
Okay.
And so this is again why it's important for you to interject, because a lot of people are not thinking with that canvas behind them. You have some knowledge. And what some people don't know, they're not thinking that North America is the heartland of the Moroccan Empire. They think America's a country, because Europeans told them that. And then they think that Europeans are Americans battling other people on this land, which implies civil activity, like Civil War type stuff, which is the nature of this misrepresentation, when it's actually European conquistadors battling with each other over spoils, being the German, Dutch, the French, and the Britons competing for spoils. Even when you understand this true politics, you understand that the so-called Indian American War is a false presentment. The French-American War is a false presentment. The Spanish-American War is a false presentment. Spanish was even made up by European sociologists to cover up Moorish history. Before the fall of Al-Andalus, there was no Spain. You know, so even when they're writing history, they say, oh, the Moors in Spain, which is all over the world with all scholars, it's kind of like a misnomer because the history is Al-Andalus. And the area of Aragon and Castile was called Spain after Isabella and Ferdinand's marriage. With the determination of organize the German Dutch tribe nations against the Moors under the Spanish Inquisition, everything has to do with conquest. And so therefore their occupation and their activities in the Western Hemisphere and upon the planet is all predicated on the conversion of the Moorish Empire into the hands of the German Dutch tribes, which are commonly referred to today as Europeans. Yeah. And that all the European nations are essentially Germans. Yeah. They have many of the political names of the nation states that exist in Europe today, when you go back a few hundred years, actually didn't exist. You know, so the concepts about not only about history here, but history actually in Europe. You know, because what a lot of people don't know, that even parts of England was part of the Moorish Empire. You know, so your concepts on a lot of things are incorrect. And keep this in mind, this history is for Moorish Americans whose concepts about their estate, their lost estate, their vast estate, their concept about themselves, their concept about the political world is absolutely incorrect. And thus, a lot of the colored legislation that they assume to be legitimate legislation actually come under de facto government operations to put them to sleep. So this must be put in context, and this is very important. With the Congress adjourning sine die, March 27, 1861, which was actually a coup d'etat, the United States as a political, legitimate political body politic operation under treaty stopped existing. The people or the Congress persons who held those seats secretly, and this is very important, set up for themselves under the secret Treaty of Verona. Write that down because you must know the politics. We won't get into that, but you must know the politics. Set up for themselves a kingship oligarchy. Write that down so you need to know who you're dealing with. They are really board of directors for the United States Service Corporation that Lincoln bankrupted. Are we clear? Style the United States. It's a corporation that was bankrupted and not the nation. Distinguished from the Republic Order of the United States agreement under treaty between the Moors and the Europeans doing business at North America. Are we clear? Now, the stars and stripes that people think is the national flag is really a flag of amity and commerce. Your 7 red stripes, because actually they're supposed to be vertical. Okay. All right? They're supposed to be actually vertical and not horizontal. Represent the 7 principles of Moorish culture. The principle 7. And your white stripes represent the 6 German tribes or nations. The canton of the ether blue or the white canton and the stars represent the Moorish star Venus. Yes, and the constellation of the heavens, which represent actually earth culture, which is cosmology. Are we clear? And then when you're dealing with what they call a Confederate flag, you're actually dealing with Moorish culture, and you're dealing with the Holy Cross of the heavens. All right, so it's not a negative. And that's another subject matter in its own right. Now, for those of you who want to get into more details, I suggest that you get some of Abdul Talib Mosi Bey's books on Moors and Masonry, etc., and the tools to get some detailed history. Deliberately, as for myself, I deliberately try to stay with the surface aggregate of that information, because my point of communication with you is remedy. Remedy in clearing up minds, meaning that getting our people politically active with proper concept, meaning that refined definition of knowledge should be dispensed in what you call a university setting. You know, because what happens is if you do it in a situation like this, it's interesting, but people get scattered. You know, because it's so contrary to what they thought. And while important, what really needs to be done is remedy for the people, which means we need to stop the social economic bleeding and the lechery that's put upon the people. You know, so my issue with my presentments is to limit the bleeding the best I can, sort of like a field soldier looking at the injury of the people and then delivering them to the scholars who have detailed information who should be teaching them. Do you understand what I'm saying? And of course you already know this is one of the reasons why, which is logical, why the illustrious Prophet Noble Ali commanded the Moors in the nature of the Moorish Temple of Science, which is the unincorporated operations of the Prophet Noble Ali, which in 1926 adopted as its corporate name the Moorish Science Temple of America, commanded in the charters that all temples must have a school, because the detailed dispensation of knowledge must be done in a university setting, where the people are settled and that true studies can go on. So yes, one of the other things that you'll notice, Pam, is the correlation of dates, and people have a tendency not to pay attention to that. And so these things we want to bring to your attention. All right, it's very important. But again, and essentially, understanding the de facto operations that the people have been thinking is de jure government is very important to make clear in people's minds, because they have been growing up generations with a sense of security that does not exist for them. A sense of legal liberation that never existed. And they have settled into themselves in the communities with a psychology of certain freedoms and liberties that actually never existed. And the political operations with Europeans and the overseers that they have placed among us that look like us have been to promote this false paradigm knowingly, to make the people feel secure when they're actually being systematically raped and exploited, which is the real circumstance of our people, political. And so I will deal with the issues of bringing remedy in that area, because I know that much of the suffering of the people has to do with their blind faith in the systems of political operations when they really don't know the political operations. They assume that they do, but they're predicating their thoughts, their operations, organizations that they set up on the concept that they were freed in 1865. And that they were manumitted 1865. Manumission as a fact in law means the transfer of stock or personage into the hands of another. It's not the liberating of people. And they've been falsely told that their manumission was freedom. And that has been promoted for generations. Are we clear? Again, false paradigm of the Emancipation Proclamation. All right? And don't hesitate to interject. Go ahead.
Okay, you mentioned the time period of 1877, and you also mentioned the guys of other...
Wait.
1861? And
1861, when the Congress adjourned Sine Die,
okay.
It was really a coup d'etat.
Okay.
That must be, if that's not ingrained in your mind, because remember, the Sine Die action of the Congress is a fact. However, it's the only part that's told in the reconstructed history.
Right.
And so people's mind, although all the evidence is there, they're not thinking that it's a coup. Even though they murdered Lincoln. It still don't dawn on the people that this is a coup d'etat. Only because it's not written as a coup d'etat. But even the fact that it's a Congress adjourning sine die, which means without day, that's what it means. Sine die means without day. That means the journals and the records were ceased. There was no reassembly date, and without a political reassembly, it dissolves. For it is a corporate operation. Because keep in mind, the operations of the Europeans here is not jus sanguinis. You know, they're not the people of the land. It's a political operation. So when they adjourn sine die, they dissolve the legitimacy of their operations. The protection or the legal existence of the operation is only under the Republic, secured by the ordinance of 1787 and the treaty, which supersedes that Constitution, which is protected in Article 3 of that Constitution and Article 6 of that Constitution, which is again why the Europeans at North America and the so-called quote-unquote Negro, Indian, Black Indian, Negro leader guys who are assigned to the people do not teach civics, because it will be absolutely obvious that there are frauds and the people's concepts are fraudulent, if you get the point. And logically, to have people in a position of subjugation, you must maintain ignorance among them. So this is again why these things are misrepresented. And also, as an interjection, when you know this history, as we're presenting to you, and we could go into even more details of exposure and revelation, and you take that into context, then you'll understand certain things that our illustrious prophet Noble Ali said in context of its time, and in context of the knowledge of the history, and even certain phrases that he chose to say, and even certain things that he said in context of connotative presentment, with the qualification for us to go back to the state of mind of our ancient mothers and fathers, and also to interject a statement in relationship to that Constitution. And since the Constitution has never been changed, 1774, so as soon as you do the research, you'll find out that it was. So for political purposes and sensitivities, and because of the attacks that were taking place, he didn't say that, but he led you to the information. Now, and that's why he also said the half that's not been told. If I told you everything, you go back to sleep. And this is also why I was commanded through all the grand sheets and sheets of the Moorish Science Temple of America and the Moorish Temple of Science, which is also called the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, which was a civic organization up until 1928. That he taught government, and he reminded the people of Marcus Garvey, who absolutely taught government and civics. You know, so this leaves no out for those who make excuses and try to pretend that Drew didn't promote constitutional enforcement. And also, and documents what I'll bring later, is one of which I was looking for, actually, is one of the famous people and people who were around the prophet during that time, who emphasized publicly and constantly in statements, one of the most important things for the Moorish Americans to do is study that Constitution. And of course, Noble Ali said to enforce that Constitution. And of course, you already know that has not been practiced amongst most Moorish Americans, unfortunately, in the Moorish Science Temple of America. Which is, again, I must be honest, is as to why we have to teach this information in a venue like the House of Reawakening Minds, because unfortunately, a lot of this information has been disallowed by the leadership in the temples. Now that's just the truth. So when people think they see divisions or something, it's really not that. They need to understand the politics and the seriousness of the politics. Do you understand? Because it is the people's birthright. And so these things that I'm telling you is not unknown by these people. They're choosing what their mother sent them here for. I'm doing what my mother sent me here for. You know, so it's just what it is, you know. However, it is the truth. And for those who disagree with me, I don't have any bad feelings. I say, prove me wrong.
That's right.
And make your own peanut butter sandwich. And we'll return to the text. Now notice that we haven't got past the first paragraph. But again, you have to interject the real history because the real history is not being told. Which shows, again, why in scholarship, like the prophet of drawing commanded the grand sheets says, in relationship to a lot of things that they learn in the chambers and the real history, he said to them not to go to the grave with this information. And he also said, I want brave men and women in relationship to this Moorish movement. Of course, you already know, you don't need to be brave to sit around and pray when nobody's arguing about that. You need to be brave to tell the truth because people want to murder you when you tell the truth. Go ahead, Dr. Naya.
No, that was just a hand up saying, I agree.
Hallelujah to you.
That was a hot shit.
Got that?
That's
You got that? Because like it's really true. You know, because one of the major issues, and this is a cue to you too. One of the favorite assassination tools of the Jesuits is to poison people. You know, and so this is again why even when you're out, you have to be careful what you eat where you're at, because one of the tools they use is poisoning people.
Yes.
You know, to get people out of the way.
Yep.
However, you know, Cosmic Mother also, you know, she's doing what she got to do to protect too. Go ahead.
Islam Rashid. I know one of the things, like in the first paragraph, I know we're still stuck there, but one of the things that is overlooked are those commercial mercenary wars that occurred for 100 years.
Exactly.
You know, throughout the coastline in the Moors who fought for our land.
Yes.
Against the colonists.
Exactly.
You know, so
everybody didn't sit down
right.
the way it's presented.
Exactly.
And also, keep this in mind, and this is very, very important. The commercial mercenary war, which it was, continued. Mm-hmm. And another proof that it was commercial mercenary war, because they misnamed it in history as the Civil War. I dare any scholar or historian or anthropologist to present to the public the alleged treaty that allegedly ended the war. It doesn't exist. This is why the commercial activities of wars have continued, and particularly their wars against other nation states, which they've been launching from North America, which are still Inquisition hegemony operations. And all scholars know this. Now, some people who rather not tell the real truth about this being Inquisition operations will just use the controlled narrative phrase white supremacy. Yeah. It is Inquisition colonial hegemony, unum sanctum operations of the Spanish Inquisition that never ended. That's the truth. And the Emancipation Proclamation is an executive order issued by Abraham Lincoln so that the Moors who were held to servitude could be used as soldiers to shift the war which they were losing. And it was only in the states that were in rebellion, not in the states that were still part of the Union. So the false concepts that was promoted in history that our people were free is a lie. The politics since then has been the political art of hiding that true history of which we're talking about right now, and to create the illusion of the liberation and the manumission, which is connotatively misrepresented, of the descendants of the Moors who are the heirs of the land and the estate, not to know who they are, not to know it's their land, to be mentally disconnected from their estate, and for the language that's introduced to us to be weaponized, which is connotative linguistics, which is why the false narratives that the misconceptions that exist to this very day in reconstructed history exist among our people. So the synopsis of what we're giving is giving the real history so that we can help slay the dragon's food, which is the naivety that exists with the people, which is called blind faith. And from the blind faith created by the continued operations of the Inquisition hegemony is the foundation from which the fiat systems of the popes of Rome has its origin. And so when you're looking at the fiat operations, most of the people, as the people begin to wake up a little bit, they'll talk about the abrogation of Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, which is derived from Muslim law, because they don't want to honor their obligations of the treaties, you see. So how do you subjugate? You continue to act like you're operating under it when you're actually subverting it. So this is the abrogation, which is commonly written into history about the abrogation of the so-called Gold Clause. And also, less information or less knowledge about the Nobility Clause, or the original Article of Amendment 13 with its 20 sections, is taught to the people. And the abrogation of the judicial branch of government, particularly Section 2, diversity of citizenship, i.e., the consular principle on which all controversies of persons and property is to be dealt with under the ordinance of 1787 whenever there's a controversy between the people of the land and the European settlers who are supposed to be operating under treaty and this Constitution, i.e. to protect the rights of the people of the land, ordinance of 1787. Therefore, Article 3. So even when they're talking about the abrogation of that Constitution by the Congress, who are now secretly Board of Trustees for the United States Service Corporation, and for the Crown of both England and the Crown of the Bankers and Lawyers, which is the second Crown, and located on Fleet Street in London, who are really who they're working for, i.e., when people loosely say they're working for the corporation, yes, that corporation that Lincoln bankrupted, United States Service Corporation, that was bankrupted in 1860 by Lincoln. You know, the United States Service Corporation, trading company that Benjamin Franklin had registered in France. And that is the foundation of the political agenda to this very day, when the Europeans at North America are always throwing out this phrase, quote unquote, the national debt. Now again, and this is another bullet point, to put this in context, because I already know you being schooled in fundamental accounting and analysis and critical analysis and structure, you will pick this up immediately. The national debt. First, the Europeans in government are not the nationals. The people under occupation are the nationals, which is also why the Europeans keep claiming to be Americans, so that you don't pay attention to that fact. Are we clear? And when you know the history of the bankruptcy of the United States Trading Company, whose platform Lincoln was run on, you got to put this in perspective. They've been converting the estates, the inheritances, the wealth, and the labor of the Aboriginal indigenous Moors that they branded Negro, Black, Colored, and Indians onto the United States Trading Company's coffers. This is why they promote the United States as the country and claim to be the nation. That's the origin of the quote-unquote phrase, the national debt. That phrase is made by the foreign European colonists who are not the nationals. And so this is the source of the economic problems of the Aboriginals of the land who are targeted for profit. And also why politically the necessitation of the branding system to remove them from political protection of international law. It is the function of denationalization. It is also the function of creating the perpetuity purpose politically of them not having regress in the judicial courts under controversy of their lands being stolen by the Europeans under the Whitmore Party, Go West Young Man, Horace Greeley, where they come upon the people and they would steal the land, murder the people, or run them off and convert all of the lands into deeds and grants, etc., under the United States Service Corporation that was defunct. And this is why when you do research into land records across the United States operations, you will see these lots and things that the Europeans have commonly written into the books. They're always early and mid-1800s. They don't go back further than that. They're stealing the land from the Moors. And so they're reconstructing the history. You know, and so the Moors don't know that the states are really subdivisional political divisions made by European corporate operatives under the Roman Curia of Moorish Bonnevilles and estates. And this is why, and I'm sure that you know this even in your own family. Almost everybody in here, except for the youngest among us, maybe yourself, or some of the youngest among us, are well aware of, say, grandmom or your grandmother's mothers, where you knew there was large lots of land in your family that don't exist in your hands now. All of you have that knowledge in your families. And some of them have forgotten that.
We still have our.
Say again?
We still have our.
Yeah, but I'm just saying to you, a lot of people forget that.
Yes.
And that the reason why many of them are poor today is because the Europeans under the Inquisition operations have been stealing our land under the guise of being government and taxing them out of it. And keep in mind, they're not the government.
Still doing it.
Oh, they're still doing it. Now, this is, so when you're talking about nationalization and consciousness, this is very important. So even when you're dealing with controversies with Europeans now in the corporate states, when they attack the people under some so-called bill or tax lien or something like that, how many of our people, it never dawns on them to argue in the controversies to present the accuser, living man or woman, and not the corporate state that they're always charging against you, and then ask them to produce their naturalization card that they do not possess. Now, again, keep in mind, Ulysses S. Grant, that came into political order after or during that period of the after the assassination of Lincoln, etc. changed or modified the Naturalization Act of 1790. This was around 1870. So you're looking at dates and correlations, right? And you'll notice it's around that period of time when the Europeans under the Whittemore Party started by political action, starting to call themselves white people. And yet, they do not have a nationalization card. To keep your mind off of this, this is why they're always questioning everybody else's identity. To keep you from questioning theirs. Which absolutely you should do in every controversy. Now you see the necessity of the German Dutchman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, in his corporate capacity, not national authority, corporate capacity, shutting down consular courts.
You know,
You gotta have your mic. Get your mic. Interjection, everybody remember, you do the mic. Go ahead.
Pennsylvania has been starting to push a nationality card, identification card they're calling it.
Yeah.
That everybody has to have for you go in an administrative building or you go on their domestic flight.
And let's look at this again, and this is back to language. The corporate operatives of the corporate state of Pennsylvania issued this. Pennsylvania didn't do anything.
That's right.
And this is again where your language must change. Not that we don't understand where you're coming from, but we have to start teaching the people to dismiss connotative linguistics and personage of always referring to the corporate entity as if it acts. That's sort of like saying the box that something comes in is the thing.
Right.
Or like saying Santa Claus is real and he really answered your letters that you sent to him as a child. You know, it really is, you know, and so people need to understand that while it appears subtle and appears to have some sense of legitimacy, that is dangerous because this is also how we have promoted connotative linguistics amongst our own children.
That's right.
And also while making legal rebuttals, the practice of naming the corporate entity as an active person always is used against them and is absolutely to their detriment. Which is again why it's important for us to teach civics to our people. Their concepts are absolutely incorrect. Go ahead, Javi. Oh, give him the mic. Were you going to say something, Javi?
No, but I can say something. Because I just want
Stay in the mic, please.
I just want to clarify something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do understand that most of the time our people use the word India.
Yeah.
I have the confusion about it. And the people do not know about what is the India. Actually, Europeans describe the East India,
Yeah, exactly.
not India.
Yeah.
East India is the corporate business established in Calcutta.
Exactly. It's a business corporation, not the people of the land.
Yes. And that is belong to Netherlands.
Exactly. It's actually a business corporation of the German Dutchman.
Yeah. But all the time is a confusion sometimes. Is a confusion
Now,
for me.
now, look at this. No, because we get used to it being thrown around. No, we get used to people
Even India born 1947.
Exactly.
Where this company
It's a corporation.
Where the India come?
Exactly.
And we supposed to teach our people if they use the word they must use Indian tribe.
Now,
Indian tribe.
now look at this, Yapi.
That belong to Netherlands.
Exactly. Now
Not
keep this in
the
mind,
Indian people.
East India
Islam.
Company, with that tag, come from actually belong to German Dutchmen. Now the same way, and this is a perfect demonstration of connotative linguistics. Now, you know that, and I know that. But how many people, just like our people here in the north, even know that Sindh are also referred to as Mohammedans in many of the areas because of the Mauryan and Nanda-Gupta dynasties. So our people don't even know their ancient history in that area, which you mentioned many times. But again, it's the duty of scholars to have told them.
Yes.
Well, that's fine, because we're going to do
Yes, we are.
it. So the people who have had this information and have been hiding it, calling themselves sheiks and grand sheiks, and have betrayed the prophet. And most of you understood that when they betrayed the prophet, they betrayed you too.
That's right.
They betrayed the cause, and they betrayed the nation.
That's right. That's
However, it only continues because people have not been educating them. It's fine. They don't have to do it. We got this.
Yes.
We got this, because people are coming into this movement with their eyes wide open.
Yes, yes.
And we're going to share this information with them so that these people who have been trying to sell them out under the guise of loving the Ujjwali can no longer do it. The way you do it is educate them. You don't argue with these people.
That's right. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
When you're a farmer and the pigs run wild and they're all in the field and you're saying, sweet, they say, and the pigs say, yeah, right. I ain't coming, I ain't acting. They're over there in the bushes and stuff, right? You say, sweet,
Islam.
all that kind of stuff, right? All you gotta do is change the food. Because they all gotta come back to the trough, right?
Yes.
To feed, right?
Yes.
You don't argue with them. Change the food. And the other thing, don't put none in there. And after a while, they had the door. Got something to eat, what y'all? I think bologna in there, some kind of sandwich, Cheerios, that's all you gotta do. So change the literature, and the criminals can no longer continue to miseducate the people. Just interject truth. Go ahead, Justin. Islam.
I just want to refer to sharing some information. Sister Delala, she
Stay on the mic, please.
Sister Delala, she does show me some material established by the campus in 1928.
Oh, yeah.
And there they use the word India. I am thinking, the same thing. India was born in 1947.
Of course.
And the temple people use the word India in
Now.
1928.
Correction.
Where does this come?
No, here we go. Now, and this is good. See, because these questions should be presented.
Islam.
Now I digress, and we'll go back into defense of the prophet, and to remind you, the prophet Ojwale said, I had to go from my thumb, around my elbow to my thumb to bring you what you need.
Actually,
He also said, pay attention, he said, go back to that state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers.
Yeah.
I'll remind you. He also said the half has not been told. If I told you everything, you would go back to sleep.
Yes.
Other thing he said, since that Constitution has not been changed, 1774, and declared all men equal and free, the 13th and the 14th Amendment, 14th and 15th Amendment, is not necessary for the salvation of my people and citizens. Now, point. No Drawley came to the people in the state of mind where they are so that they would not reject him. And he reminded them that the Moorish movement has a Rotarian complexion. So what are the adepts and the grand sheiks of the temples supposed to school the people? Because part of their charter is must have a school, right?
Yes.
Rotarian means universal. When he opens up the divine warning by the prophet for the nations, he opens it up with a statement of diversity of nationality, making reference to the different nation states and our obligation as Moorish Americans, being Moorish Americans, to step up to the constitutional principles of government and stop practicing those things, names and principles that delude to slavery. And so as soon as you go into the knowledge and the history and do the research, you will find the flaws because they're absolutely there. See? Now, point of fact. If you're dealing with a people who don't know their own pedigree and bloodline, and you tell them on the surface, you know, there was no J in language used until the 1500s, loosely among scholars, and then not officially in public till around the 1700s. And then you say the one that they called Jesus, his name wasn't Jesus, his name was Yahshua. They would accuse him of having a devil. So he writes a book. This is the history of Jesus in India, Africa, you see, etc. Now, when you do research, you immediately find what he's leading you to in context. So you accept, then you start studying. Go ahead, good brother. Give him the mic.
I would like to share. I just heard the people used to the India word Jesus. I was right now in the 62-year-old.
Yeah.
And when I was, we do not use the word Jesus.
Yes.
We use the word Yeshu. Why?
Because that's what it is. Yes.
Hebrew language. Why? Yeshu.
It's actually,
Why?
and it's actually not
Not
it's
J.
actually not
Where
Hebrew.
this name come J? I do not understand.
Yes, you do.
Many times I
Yes,
point
you do.
out to them,
Yes, you do.
we do not use the J.
I know you don't. But I'm saying to you, and remember when we were talking in the car, I'm going to say this again. Always put in context that the outreach is to a people who are not educated. And the one they called Jesus did not speak Hebrew, he spoke Aramaic. Although it is dialectical, one of the Urdu languages, or what you call Persic series of language, yes. Now, so when Yahshua would greet the people, the greeting was, Assalamu alaikum. Right? Now, so when they translated from Aramaic into Germanic Anglo, now keep in mind, even what we call English really doesn't even belong to the Europeans. It's a mixture of actually Arabic, Hebrew, Persic, Urdu, Latin, and a few Gaelic words, which is really what the European language is. So English don't belong to them either, it belongs to us. You know, so when you know the truth, your whole concept changes. You stop letting them steal from you by displacing you. And you stop promoting false concepts yourself amongst your own people. That's the Europeans. That ain't his stuff. It's still your stuff. You know, now, and so, like, as an example, so now, the Constantinians, to promote their Constantinian orders, will say in the Bible, and when Jesus came amongst the people, gave him a fish sandwich and stuff like that. And he say, peace be unto you. But they'll never say it in Aramaic, because then they have to tell the truth of who he really was. It's because, you know, she said in Aramaic, he said, Assalamu alaikum. If you do that now, they throw these people out the church on their head. What you doing that Muslim stuff? Y'all trying to be Muslims and stuff? Oh, that's the one they call Jesus? That they claim to love. Scholars know they don't love him, never did they murder him. They just use him as a front for their Constantinian order, and they've been getting away with it for centuries. And so people who have been promoting the so-called Christian doctrine in the name of Jesus have been lying both deliberately and by default of miseducation. Likewise, that same pattern of Trojan horse operations, everything has been weaponized, whether you're dealing with food, language, communications, everything that Rome touches, they weaponize. So don't get mad understand that it's Inquisition hegemony operations. You don't excuse them. But don't be spooky about this and forget that they are colonists. A colonist in the political arena of human affairs is correlated with what a leech is in biology. So when you go into that, muddy lake to swim, backstroke and stuff like that, and you come out on the other side, they're most likely they're not freckles that you got. They're probably leeches. More than likely. And so lose your naivety about the reality of politics. So the Europeans are political bloodsuckers, not because they don't like you personally. They're colonists. You forgot they're colonists. And they're not Americans. Now, when you call them Americans and white people, you just call them landlords or lords of the land and sovereign. Just because our people can't read, that's only because they've been miseducated. Right? So now you have scholars, you got Masons, you got a lot of secret societies, they all know this. The only ones that haven't been knowing this is people who've been trained to believe that humans' identities are crayons. How do you like my girlfriend's light-skinned black leather coat I bought her? And people who can't read, who don't know, oh man, that's tight. Oh man, I know you hit some, you put a couple G's down. Yeah, I do that sometimes. They think that stuff is real. The real world knows these people got mental problems. That they really can't read. Not because they are genetically unintelligent, because they have been tampered with. Really. And they don't know that connotative linguistics is a military operations of weaponized language, targeted to occupy people under European colonial Inquisition hegemony that they've been told is white supremacy. Right, to divert them from what's up. Thus, the same principle of the Emancipation Proclamation put in place under executive orders, not an act of Congress, as a war operations to use them as war fodder, to force the corporate states that were in rebellion back into the Union conditionally. And it did not apply to any of the northern states or any of the corporate states that did not join in the rebellion of the coup d'etat. Now that's the fact and that's the truth. So as long as the misconception of how to look at history exists with us, we poison intellectually and politically the next generation. Yep. And as they have lost reference points by those who know this information being silent, they themselves have irresponsibly sacrificed them. And those in the generations past who have promoted the white and black, German, Dutch brand system as identities upon their own people, knowingly have agreed to abandon their estate. Now this is where jurisprudence and heritage and hereditament knowledge and trust comes in. And so, of course, civilized people who honor their mothers and their fathers, who know the rules of government, will never come here. As an example, you will never see a civilized man from Tianyi or Manchuria, or what you call, you've been told is China, that's Tianyi and Manchuria. You know, you'll never hear any of those civilized people come talk about, did you meet my light-skinned yellow girlfriend? Where's the light-skinned yellow people's marching group? Because they honor their mothers and civilized people talking about human beings as if they're crayons, like some people who've been trained like rats and don't know that that's war machine operations. Talk about my grandma was black, my uncle was colored, my cousin was Negro, you know what I mean? And my sister is a soul sister. You know, we got this going on, we family, that's schism. No such people exist on planet Earth. Never did. And no such people produce anything. Those are stock names created by German Dutch masters to distinguish their Moorish defeated property from other human families who maintain the integrity of sovereignty and the honor of their mothers and fathers and their history. And so you see other Asiatics will tell you, I'm say if they're from what you call Egypt, Hikuta or Hatkuta, right? Sierra Leone, Zimbabwe, etc., Algeria, you know, Tunis, all of them still Moors, you know. However, you'll never see them talk about I'm black and I'm light-skinned black and medium black and stuff like that. And our people really think those are identities because they've been trained, not knowing that those are designed by German Dutchmen to steal their estates. Because now, keep this in mind, this must be understood by you. When the people accepted the brand system, they cannot use the treaty, the ordinance, and the Constitution to defend themselves or their property because they're not a party to it. That's where the brand systems, see, because there is no remedy for people who are not part of a nation because the constitutions and principles of international law that secure the rights of humans come from the agreed nativity organs of the earth called humans who acknowledge the nativities of their mothers and therefore have heritage and inheritance and under natural principles of law common to all human beings called the common law, there's a universal agreement of the acknowledgement of the divine sovereignty of humanity. And so nations agree to international law. And any people who are not of a nation are off that platform. That's why the Europeans denationalized the Moors that they conquered and put their family names on them as a curse, that whatever they buy or sell with the mark or the number of that name is corporate state property. And these are political acts. They're not mere opinions. You know, so again, to pacify such persons who have been denationalized so they won't rebel, you give them things like the Emancipation Proclamation and call it a freedom instrument, which it is not. It's an executive order for warfighter. Go ahead, good brother. Islam.
Question is, what's the first step for an individual to get on track?
We'll get to that later too, because even individual is not what you think it means, but we'll accept the connotative meaning of it for the moment.
Okay, thank you. And the degree of difficulty for one to get on track.
Again, if you yourself basically don't study, and if someone who knows don't tell you the true history, you're subject to reconstructed history because it's put out there to educate you with. That's what you would be exposed to. And so people will be exposed to what they think is real history. It's called controlling the narrative.
Okay.
So now, again, to complete the answer, the first serious organized bodies politic in the North Gate, North America is the North Gate, to counter European hegemony operations is called the Old Canaanite Temple of 19 and 13. The platform consists of social, economic, political, historical, spiritual, and religious studies with an outreach operations among the people or heirs of the estate to inform them of these things that are necessary, quote unquote, to make them better citizens. And of course, in the process of that civics, which is the science of government and the duties and responsibilities of government and citizenry, etc., and the different levels and degrees of citizenry must be studied. This is the necessary platform by which that remedy that you're asking is presented, for it is the science of government.
Right, so that would be on the political platform, but it still would be full circle, probably, I would assume, through Gnosticism or esoteric.
Now
as well,
when you're talking about Gnostic studies, now you're talking about religious philosophy.
Okay, but if...
Not but it
all right,
continues.
so
Good.
as in Morocco, where we stand now.
What we just said now, but
the main
this is
practice
not
would be-
Morocco complete.
Okay,
So you're talking North, Central, South America, the adjoining islands, including areas, a part of area of North, South Asia, which is also referred to in the modern world as Africa on the other side.
So we say...
Comprise the Moroccan Empire, including the whole coast from the north to the south.
But we was to say North America.
Heartland, then you would say the heartland of the Moroccan
North
Empire.
America, or heartland of the
Of the
Moroccan Empire.
heartland of the Moroccan Empire.
Disguised as North America or something like that.
It's not disguised as
It's not
North America.
disguised.
It is North America.
Okay. So if the common or the major practice was Christianity,
It was not and is not.
no, is now.
No.
I mean, our people are blind. We're blinded by Christianity right now.
The imposed practice.
Well, I mean, is that not what we're blinded by
Yes.
as people right now?
Yes, and not just that, even the guise, what they're calling Christianity is really Constantinism disguised under the name Christianity.
Right.
This is, again, in harmony with your statement and question, is part of the instruction.
Okay, so being blind, and I'm going to say myself, what is my first order of business?
You know how they say, when you start doing any research into the human family and the philosophies of the human family, Gnosticism and religion, in you know how we say you go back to the state of mind, which means you go to the historical documents, and not unlike it's said in the Bible, when the people said in relationship to Yeshua, when they reconstructed, well, if you go away, how will we know God? I mean, you know, how will we know God? And he says, his reply is this: look first back into the hole from which you were dug. Which means if you don't know your history, don't start talking about God's. That's really what that means. But how many so-called religious scholars analyze that or promote that, which is really what it's saying? They will not promote that because it would be devastating to their denominations and the way they present the God principle, Jesus, and all the prophets. No, and that harmonizes with this. When you go into Oaspi, you know, the Vedas, the Septuaginta, and the different books, Torah, Tanakh, Pentateuch, all of the holy books. How dare you claim the love of God you do not see, and love not your brothers and sisters whom you see by the day, which is exactly opposite to the way so-called religion is promoted with people, telling them to believe in the mystery God without question. You know, also, so when you're dealing, say, as an example in the book of Mark, when you're dealing with Yeshua, when he makes reference to future prophets, where the people keep saying he was the last one, he says, surely I go away in relationship to these people when they're asking him about him. And he says, I must go away. For if I do not go away, the Comforter will not come unto you. He said, I go to my Father, and ye will see me no more. but a comforter will come to you. So he's letting you know that the prophet's coming after him. And he's also told you that he ain't coming back. Revs have told you that Jesus is coming back with sandwiches and everything. Pepsi and Coke, whatever flavor you want. You don't got this party tailgating. Meaning they contradict the book right into people's faces. But in harmony, what you're saying, if you can get people to start paying attention to what is there and not to what the so-called pastors are telling them in their denominations, the books themselves will contradict the Constantinian order. But the people don't really read their books. They just, I just got this Bible yesterday and stuff. Get myself together. And they start all that stuff. Well, get myself together, give me $5. Oh, 10 Jesus is having. And then start talking about how much they love that book. They don't really study that book. Or do they study the history? And so I'm saying to you, what must people like yourself and we do? Get people to pay attention to details. Get them to stop lying to themselves. Get them to study the fundamental science of language, which is etymology. Give them the fundamental rules. Take them back to a 3rd grade etymon degree. Even the common people, which we all often do, we'll take them to an ordinary dictionary and take them right to black that they thought they were, and then take them right into the morphology of them, take them right to an ordinary dictionary and show them that they're Moors. So that's elementary. So again, that's in harmony with what the question is. It's education, simply that. Go ahead, sis.
It's I'm going to camelback off the question that the brother was also wanted to seek information from. Actually, a year, as of this day, last year was my first day sitting in civics class. And
okay, wait a minute, hold on. You gotta get Sister Tamara on hand, y'all.
I just thought about that. But 2 months later, I would say in January, I took a etymology class through Brother Abdullah Bey at Temple. And that class was for 10 weeks. And I would tell you, those 10 weeks, it opened up. It was a paradigm shift because you thought you can read because you have the degrees. And you say, I went to school, I can read, I can talk.
Words,
you pronounce the words.
Syllables,
the words make sense, they're put together, But then when you learn etymology, you say, whoa, wait a minute, what I thought is not actually really the truth. So when you learn etymology, you learn the truth and the science and origin of the word. And the history of the word, it changes everything that you read.
And what you recognize immediately for everyone,
it accelerates your knowledge of constitution.
The miseducation of the people is not accidental. Language has been weaponized.
Absolutely. That's fine. Absolutely.
And when you're able to just accept the truth that you've been played, get over your ego, and if you have enough integrity and love in your body that's left, you will start telling the truth to try to redeem the people around you, your family members, and the generation coming after you, knowing they will be sacrificed if you stay silent.
Absolutely. And, I thought about a term. I remember as a child, I was just talking about this Saturday. We all had this game that we played called Etch-a-Sketch, in which we were drawing whatever we imagined would be. And when we made that mistake, we just shook it up.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do with the drawing that was created for us. Just shake it up and you start creating your own true, real paradigm of the truth. Yes. And then we will move forward and we will rise up and we will take back what was lost.
And considering that every science, and this is back to science, you start applying the sciences of the different disciplines that are part of society, which means you learn the rules of the game of human society. Fundamental civics, linguistics, grammatication, orthology, which which is rooted under etymology. So you start paying attention to timelines. You look at correlations and you start looking at families of words. You start looking at root words and recognize that actually a greater part of world cultural language is rooted in star,
Yes.
the heavens. Consider looking at stars, astrology, star study, astro study, etc. It is rooted in the culture. Once you know the root and the families of words, you'll start looking at things differently, but you'll also recognize that the miseducation of the people is not accidental,
No.
and that you have been deliberately tampered with. And again, it's sort of like this. When you begin to know that people in position of authority have actually, I don't care how naive you want to keep making yourself, conspired with Romans to dumb down the masses and pretend that they are separate and they're all feeding on you, your naivety will be kind of bruised. And if you're willing to be honest with yourself, you start losing your naivety. And when you start giving up your naivety, knowledge will just simply flow in because it already exists.
Absolutely. It's like connecting to the source. And as you learn those principles,
Yes.
you start learning self. And as you start learning self, you really see how much you are a part of a nation. You're a part
And
of
a part of
the universe.
everything
You're a
else.
part of everything. If you can't see yourself in anything, you can't see yourself at all.
Exactly.
So,
And it's back to even enforcing what is called law. A man, and man is the species, not gender.
correct.
A man who knows not himself cannot know God. A man who knows not himself cannot know the law. First rule in society in Gnostic culture, Asiatic, African, is man, know thyself. Okay? So again, with cultivation, it's still the answer to your question, but the answer to your question is the answer to a lot of people listening who really have been denied fundamental civics. And not knowing that civics includes philosophies. This whole idea, or false idea, that civics has no what you call Gnostic, or what they refer to connotatively as spiritual connotations in it, is not true. Because even the connotative law, or what is called the common law upon which constitutions are predicated, is based on the fundamental principles of honor your mothers and fathers that your days may be longer upon the earthland. And in the common law, the predication of your honor of your mothers and fathers means your connection to and your protection of, your knowledge of, and your adherence to the ancient traditions and customs of your ancient mothers and fathers from time immemorial constitutes what is called the common law. And that foundation that's recognized by civilized government is the predication of the capacity of a being living to come out of the dead and to challenge the Roman law, the canon law, upon which the straw man and transmitting utility is based in the first place, which is where the problem is with this global estate trust, and trumps the Roman law and other systems of law. And this is jurisprudence, or what's called positive law. And of course, you must be yourself, and you must know yourself, and know the customs of your pedigree in order to enforce the common law and be recognized. It's really simple. It's actually based in common sense. So common sense, common law, divine law are all relative. Don't think that they're not, because they absolutely are. Yeah, you got that right. Circle of life. Circle of life. It absolutely is. So again, those who know are supposed to tell the next generation. And keep in mind, as cheating and obstruction are tools, political tools used by Europeans to obstruct the natural course of descendancy which is in operation here, cognitively in operation. Is there any other questions while they're in conversation?
She go to outer space. Sometimes.
No, come on with it. Come on with it.
No, I was
No, I was asking her a question because she has taken, started studying, on www.moorishamericanconsulate.org. There is a Tuesday night class. You can sign up for it. You can send an email to
Would
them.
you want to share something with us?
Yeah, and Tamara has already been on 2 classes, but for someone who's trying to navigate his or her way through what now, what first, what next, they've done a lot and they're still doing. There's a lot more to do, but there's a processes in place whereby if you go on that site, attend the online Tuesday night classes, and then you will, once you declare your nationality, your appropriate persona, your proper person, you publish your, that fact through them, you will get a PDF of a book that's about 200 plus pages in length that is full of what to, how to, why to. So we highly recommend that. I mean, somebody just said online, we need a Moorish website, and I just threw 3 websites out at
Say it again.
Yeah, moorishconsulate.org, readmoreaboutit.com, riseofthemoors.org. That, these are some sources that we are recommending that you will utilize as a source. I get phone calls daily. There is not a day that goes by, Monday through Sunday. I am the receptionist, secretary, founder, and I don't mind it. But there's resources out there that have a lot more knowledge than I do, and we're happy that this is what's happening. Many of these young men and women, or men and women, have studied just like you're doing under Grand Sheik, some for years. I don't know how many times I hear people say, I go to sleep listening to Taj's, they say Taj or say Grand Sheik's YouTube videos. I mean, more than a few people have said that to me. And they keep, playing over. Some of them actually play it over and over so they can write down, because a lot of times, some of you are sitting here and, just listening, but once you begin to employ other ways of retaining, like writing too, it's something called crystallizing your thinking happens. You can't just hear it, but like he'll say, take notes. You should be taking notes, because then you can go back and kind of, once you go over it, there's this thing we call, even if you don't think you're getting it, it's called osmosis. And if somehow something happens where you're able to absorb the knowledge by being in the present. So that's why these people who listen to the videos, the YouTube videos that we don't post, but we're glad they're out there, because that's how so many thousands and thousands of you know about your Moorish heritage, because you looked at a YouTube video. We give thanks to our sister Delilah, because way back in 2011 and so forth, since then she's been making sure that those videos are out there. But now they're still out there. But we want to say, as you listen, write down what you're listening to, go back over it and study it. But now there are some websites that are starting to crystallize it for you, putting it into some logical progression, and that's what you're asking. I get those calls all the time, so I'm like, now I'm shooting people links to these websites. Like, I don't have to talk to them for an hour. Just go to this website.
There are tools. And at the consulate,
I will list them again, but it's www.moorishamericanconsulate.org. www.readmoreaboutit.com. www.riseofthemoors.org. These are some excellent resources. Feds Province Regency.org that you can go to for information. And we are we're saying that we don't have it all in one place. It's beginning to, as Grand Chief, you're saying, cellular memory is kicking in because it's in our DNA. We know these things. That's what we call this house of reawakening minds. That means to reawaken what's already in you.
It's actually like a garden where it's being cultivated, actually.
Absolutely.
Yes. Because honorable hearts and minds have to make places like this available where liberated and free thinking is not suppressed. In many venues where this information should have been distributed decades ago, the administrators are suppressing this information while they know it for themselves. Because they're afraid that the people that begin as believers and followers will quickly accelerate and surpass them and remove them from power, recognizing they've been dishonorable. So they focus on keeping certain information from people in order to preserve their own power that don't actually belong to them, does not belong to them. All right? So let's continue. Second paragraph. You go ahead. Now, the Emancipation Proclamation was widely attacked at that time, these are the early 1800s, as freeing only the slaves over which the Union had no power. Are we clear? But in practice, it committed the Union to ending slavery. In other words, they were caught in the fact that they issued it out there, so they kind of make it kind of look good. Like you say something, I can box and stuff, get in the ring. Well, see, what it was, I slipped and stuff, that type thing. Like somebody dancing, and they got it going on, oh, you got that, and they do the split and stuff, and then can't get up, say, I like it down here. I meant to do that type stuff. Like sometimes you skating and you going backwards and stuff, with the music and stuff. Hit the wall and stuff. Yeah, I was trying to see if I could scrape it and stuff. No, daggone, you couldn't skate. What it is. And so they got to cover up the tracks. It was front like they freeing the people when they didn't. All right, because that's what that's really all about. All right. And of course, they don't have any law or right to free people because they had no right to enslave them. Like what it is. So anyway, this was controversial in the North. And this was the knowledge that Lincoln bankrupted the North. All right, are we clear? Now, it was not a law passed by Congress, but a presidential order, which of course is executive order type thing. Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy under Article 2, Section 2 of the United States Constitution. Now, so keep in mind, and you must recognize this is 1862, right? 1862. And then 1863, when these things were being enforced. The United States corporation operations ended 1861. So it's still de facto, even though accepted as being law. You see? And the other deal of it is, we never agreed to be Negroes or blacks or U.S. citizens. They said it. You understand what I'm saying? And they're trying to act like we were in the agreement already exists, which was the treaty. So they forced us out of the treaty platform with the brand system. They created a monkey operations called the Negro Acts and stuff like that. And instead, on our behalf, under wardship tenure, that we agreed to be all this stuff, and that we agreed to be Negro, Black, and Colored, Smith, Jones, and Johnson, and transact business in their name, etc., and be U.S. stock called U.S. citizens, and then wrote that as law, but it was color law. And then promoted that in the guise that we were free, which was totally BS. Total BS. and of course accepted to this day as so-called freeing of the slaves. So the proclamation did not free any slaves. In the border states, Kentucky, Missouri, Maryland, Delaware, and West Virginia, or any southern state already under Union control, even in the southern states, that were under Union control. So the issue was political fodder. Had nothing to do with what people think it has anything to do with, right? And so the proclamation first directly affected only those slaves that had already escaped to the Union side, the political operations. That's very important to understand. But as the Union armies conquered the Confederacy, thousands of slaves were freed each day until nearly all, which were approximately 4 million at the time, according to the census. That's the 1860 census, right? Were freed by July of 1865. Now, after the war, there were concerns that the proclamation, as a war measure, and that's important, understand, so the Emancipation Proclamation was a war measure. Are we clear? It was a war measure. It was not a legitimate act of a legitimate Congress liberating or mandating or freeing the persons held to Christian servitude, branded as blacks and called slaves. Are we clear?
How did they know they were free when they couldn't read?
Get the mic.
Where's the mic?
Now, say it again.
Where's the mic? I said, how did they know they were free when they couldn't read?
Not just that.
Slaves couldn't read anyway. The proclamation
Now.
it was paper.
All right, not just that.
It was like a newspaper. It wasn't something they could read anyway.
Not just that. Keep in mind, when you do the research, it's not that that was even accepted by all the people.
If that many people could be free, they had to read.
All right. It was promoted and as a narrative, but not all the people believed it or accepted it. So that's a misnomer too. You know what I mean? Because you still had rebellions and battles going on all over the nation, including operations of moving the people around. Even the tradition that has become misrepresented today as gospel music, which is actually a Gnostic operation of good spells, whereas the conscious Moors were codifying in songs and in rap, which we call today rap, statements to preserve the culture and also to promote knowledge of passageways of liberation from the European colonists for servitude. Later to be forced into or taken into the church and then later called gospel, which were really codifications of preserving the culture, Asiatic African culture, freedom roots, real history of the land, Gnostic culture, and now they have become beautifully sung begging songs. So people need to know that gospel music didn't begin in the church, it was taken into the church. So again, back to misconceptions of history. All right? All right. Right on, James, because we need those interjections. Now, so after the war, was concerned that the proclamation, Emancipation Proclamation, as a war measure, had not made the elimination of slavery permanent, because it wasn't intended to. Now, the other deal is, so now they're caught with the politics of the people being presented with this narrative that the so-called slaves were freed. Now they have to politically do legislation and activities and create narratives that imply that freedom is in the land when it really isn't, and then do politics to institutionalize the forced servitude, which you know as slavery. And of course, now you get into the operations of the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, which many of you will hear about, the 40 acres and the mules, which was to stop the Christian operations of stealing the land of our people and give at least a token back to the Aboriginal people, and they were to be given 40 acres and a mule for every man, woman, and child, and some of their finances and wealth back to support, to build on the land, any housing or anything they need to represent independent operations. Of course, that never happened, and the Freedmen's Bureau was closed, and they converted this is when you have the operations of what they call personage. And so now you've got to go back to history and understand the United States Corporation Company that Lincoln bankrupted, that has been starting to be promoted as the country. Keep this in mind. And so all the paradigm, the language, the corruption, the linguistic, connotative linguistics must now mold a new narrative. So now they're starting to promote the continent as the country. They're starting promoting the Moors as Negroes and blacks and Indians. They're promoting the Europeans as white people, which means sovereign of the land. They're promoting the United States Corporation that was bankrupted as the country, and at the same time politically setting up such legislation that would convert all the wealth of the people of the land into the coffers of the United States Service Corporation, with the people thinking that this is the government of themselves and the agreement under the Union. All of which is false. And supported by narratives like this, the executive order or the war measure called the Emancipation Proclamation. So again, even as we analyze this and interject some of the real history, you can actually just clearly see the falsehood all over it. But you also recognize that the majority of people's concepts about the politics here at North America is totally incorrect. Totally incorrect. And dangerously wrong for them to accept the narrative. But you also recognize the politics that the Europeans are saying. You know, the dispensations of the politics and the counter moves that they're making under the guise of legitimate political parties when they're both inquisitionists. And neither one of them represent the republic order as to Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution coming out of Muslim law. Go ahead, Dia.
Interjection. All right, since the German Dutchmen were the slaves by title and
Slavic. That would be not all of them, the Slavic nations. And this has to do when the Red Russians went into Slovakia with the war machines and subdued them. And so what it is, they adopted the connotative interjection or connotative meaning given to that nationality, or the short of Slovakians, slave, and their subjugation, and then applied it to the Moors in North America as if it was an ancient thing coming from ancient Egypt. And that they built, the slaves built the pyramids, and all of this is a lie. You know, so this is a part of the connotative linguistics to muddy the entire water of the entire world, to muddy the consciousness of the heirs of the world's largest estate and mentally disconnect them from the land, and then justify by themselves, the foreign Europeans, claiming to be Americans and starting to write it in books, starting to promote it in the press, starting to promote it in language, and then we start picking it up. Yes, you know, so again, so keep in mind, the slave designation didn't begin here, it began amongst the Slovakian nations being subdued.
So when they opened up the jails and prisons, and all those people came here, all right, because the civilized ones, they treated to masonry, all right. They civilized. Those are the civilized ones. but the other ones that they let out the prisons, they still owed homage to, and allegiance to, the motherland, their motherland, which was.
All of them do. See, 'cause this is the whole deal. This is what everybody needs to understand. And this is back to what we presented. One of the things that you must not forget, Europeans are not Americans.
Right.
There is not conditions where some of them are and then some of them aren't. Type thing. Europeans are Europeans. This whole paradigm of them claiming to be Americans is to steal your birthright. When you promote it, you're promoting the connotative linguistics of the theft of your own estate onto the next generation. Our conversation is that we must change our language to correct the discrepancy, because it is a known fact that words, or the word, is God. And he who controls the narrative becomes God. Because first, in human endeavor and communication is the word. And the word was with God. And the word was God. This is why the Europeans, Constantinians, spent so many centuries burning books. It's called, in history, the Christian book burnings. It's really the Constantinians' indexus librorum expurgatorius operations, index librorum prohibitorum operations under the Spanish Inquisition. Dumb down the masses. They raped the Moorish libraries of Luxor and Alexandria, which is why they carved this part of the land out for George Washington, and they call it Alexandria, land of virgins, Alexandria, Virginia, and the land of Mary, Maryland. So Maryland, the Virgin Mary, Virginia, and Maryland, they carve out a part and name it Alexander the Great. Alexandria, conquest of the Moors. And then you put an obelisk right there. You know, they'll tell you even in the architecture. Once you know the real history, you'll look at things totally different, Dorothy, and recognize your home. And know that God, the dog backwards, the dog pulled the curtain. Wizard of Oz. And then the gold claws, aggregation, silver slippers. They were silver. Then in the book, when they made the movie, they turned them to red ruby slippers to match the flag. So this is an attempted, what you call a knowledge of karmic cause and effect of Hermetic law. Because divine law does not recognize person or station. And that's the straw man's 14th Amendment. You see? Tin Man, rusty, theft of the industry. Yellow brick road is Zodiac Constitution. Emerald City is your green star. Yeah. So they're telling you in stories to remove the karmic debt. So that they can't, so you kind of caught in the future when you start figuring this stuff out, and they say, well, the devil made me do it. And he says, I just called. You follow. And that's what all that really means. Truthfully. So European knows that he's a colonist. He wants you to forget he's a colonist. Because when you call him American, you're the heir. That's called conversion. That's called an estate claim. It's an oral estate claim. So when you call the European white man an American, you just call him sovereign. So then when he acts like it, technically, you don't have a right to complain. If you call somebody God and they act like it, hey man, what you doing moonwalking in my living room? I'm God. Because you called me that. This is why if you don't understand government, a lot of people do not know that when the private commercial members of the Roman Curia, who are clerk members of the Circle Church of Chancery, claim to be judges, and our people call them judge. It is an oral trust statement. They accept it and start ruling over your estate that you don't know you have. And this is back to our conversation earlier, good brother. People who notice all they need to do is start telling people the truth. It's not a mystery. They just need to start telling them the truth. Because they have those degrees. Except they'll take a few pieces of, they don't even give them silver no more. You know what I'm saying? A few pieces of silver, they sell out. They got slugs. If you look at them coins on the side, they're like zinc and copper. I think 1964 was the last silver coins that they issued among these people. You know, they don't even know they're allowed to have money. You know, so all of those things must be corrected with us. But you understand the politics when you understand the real history. But we must lose our naivety, and we must stop allowing the generations after us to keep adopting the false narrative. And like Javed, you know, like when we're down here and we're talking about these things, then we turn around and say, well, why you didn't say, you know, when you say why, that means it hasn't dawned on you what you yourself have been saying. When you're no longer naive, you don't start saying, why didn't you tell us? Or why he's riding my bike and paying because he's a thief. Yeah. You don't need to get metaphysical about this. You know, see, because spiritually, he rides my ass out of the thing. That's your bicycle. You know, get your own ass and ride out of Jerusalem and stuff. Get your own bike. You know. A colonist exploits.
Right. Exactly.
It affects us personally, but it ain't, to him, it ain't personal, it's for the empire. You know?
What is the difference between American people and the European?
Give him right.
Give him light.
Give him right. Islam.
What is the difference between temple people, they doing acting same, look like European?
Because Negroes are property. See, listen, what do you know? Now, let's go back in history. Let's go back in history. Conversos, write that down. Conversos. Conversos. Conversos is a name, political name, that's given to Moors and Yahudi, written in history as Moors and Jews. We talk about the real Jews. You know, which Moors and Jews, Yahudi, who the Europeans converted to Constantine order of operations. The Conversos are the group of Moors who betrayed their own culture and people, from which the Europeans chose their pastor and reverend class of Negroes to be overseers of their own people and to help promote the Constantinian doctrine under the guise of Christianity, under the guise of loving Jesus, to bring our people into the blind, naive state of mind of thinking that they're worshiping the divine God in heaven, when actually they're worshiping Constantine, which is the source of our mental and economic, political, social, pseudo-religious dogma problems today that we're battling. Now that's the truth. And so when we say, well, why are those people, well, they're conversos. Get over it. It's called, you know, even though Jews is misrepresented in history, the connotative idea of what they call Judas is what they are. And just accept that. You know, get over it. You know, let's accept the reality that our people trusted them because they said Jesus every 2 minutes. No different than a lot of people in the Moorish movement who actually betrayed Prophet Noble Ali, remained in the Moorish movement, took positions of authority in the Moorish movement to stagnate the movement. But they say Noble Ali every 2 minutes to distract the people, when actually they were and still are his enemy and the enemy of the people. Do you understand? Which is why they will not touch constitutional enforcement, which is at the heart of the Moorish movement, and criticize and knock and slander Moors who do, openly and publicly, in breach of Act 3, and in breach of Act 4, and in breach of Act 1, and in breach of all of them. And that's the truth. And they only can get away with it with people who do not study. So when you understand the real politics and the opposition that comes within that venue, you know why. You know why. It's called treason.
Yes.
It's called misprision.
That's right.
It's called sedition.
That's right.
It's called dishonor. And it exists. There we go. You know, now the deal is when you see it, is you counter it, right?
That's right.
And so, go ahead, work that system. She got skills.
But those gas
See, you got
chambers,
skills.
they didn't tear up gas chambers down, we can still use them. Excuse me.
Of course they didn't. They never
They
did.
didn't tear them down.
course they
They're
did.
historical spots.
Yeah,
When
they,
you go
not,
look,
not just that.
You can check them out, so we can put them in there.
Yeah, we into this.
You don't need that. That's the problem. Do without that. You guys all right?
Now, we can deal with that later.
Yeah.
Now, this is the background too. Now, an application of the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850, so keep that in mind. Fugitive Slave Law would have required the return of fugitive slaves to their owners. And initially, the Fugitive Slave Law did not occur because the Union generals declared slaves in reoccupied areas were considered contraband of war. Are we clear? So now, from our people's point of view, they're looking at themselves as freed slaves. From the Europeans' point of view, they're looking as contraband of war. So in war, in international trade, that's called booty and prize. So the 14th Amendment was set up to disguise these activities as if these people were liberated and free. Now you understand what Jwali says in the Divine Warning by the Prophet for the Nation. It says the 14th and 15th Amendment is not necessary for the salvation of my people and citizens. But he's expecting you to do the research and put it in linguistic context, because the people will not accept it if he comes out with the real history just blunt, because they think he's against God and Jesus. So he comes to them on one level that they're familiar with, that they can relate to. Then, as they develop, he takes them to attic chambers and gives them attic degrees. This is why those Grand Sheiks and Sheikesses in the Moorish Science Temple who don't tell a lot of brothers and sisters, don't tell them about that red book and that green book when they go to attic chamber. And then when you see Jesus, it ain't there in the Quran, it becomes Yahushua. Do you understand? And even when you go into the lessons of the chambers, you know, one of the major issues that they deal with is sincerity. You know, so it's not that those things aren't addressed. They're not addressed when people first come into the movement. They're addressed in what they're used to, so they won't reject it. Then when they get acclimated or grounded, then they're raised in degrees. And Drew Ali told the people, said, Islam comes in degrees. He tells you. He didn't hide it. You know, so a lot of things connotatively that people criticize Noble Jwali with when they talk about the Quran, you know, the lessons of Jesus. They say, well, the Moors know that there's no J in Hebrew. How come Too only got the Quran, the lessons of Jesus, the real history and genealogy of Jesus. He come to the people where they are and then take them to the higher planes of life. Logically, the higher degrees of Gnostic wisdom. And even in the first chapter of the Holy Quran, which is the only chapter that's not enumerated, it's not enumerated deliberately. How many people pay attention to that? Well, thank you very much. And it's about the creation and fall of man, right?
Yes.
But when you read it, it's also telling how man will rise and redeem his lost estate. See, so again, when people take things on the surface, they're not always paying attention to the details and assuming one thing when they're not paying attention to the details. That's my reply to you for those questions. And that's putting it in context. You know, so you got to put it in context. He comes to the people in the degree that they understand and prepares to take them into the degrees that have been held back. He even opens up the Quran and says, these lessons have been held back by the Muslims of India and Africa, etc. But now they have been delivered into the Muslims' hands of North America. It's been held back from them for centuries, which means the world already knew these lessons. You ain't got to convince them. You're the ones that been out to lunch. It's like us being in a cave, right? We're in a cave chilling out there, everybody. You know, so in a cave, you ain't got shades.
Right.
Nobody needs shades in a cave, you know? So you come out to shade somebody, you know, you accidentally, you was lighting matches and stuff on, you know, doing the stick fire stuff. Yeah, you got your torch and you start noticing that the torch, the flame is going this way. So you notice there is a breeze and you start following the breeze and daylight. And so then you go out, oh man, what's that thing in the sky? The sun. Now you're going to shout from the mountaintops, you got to tell everybody it's the sun. They already know it. You the one that just came out dark. Get over yourself. You know. Just because everybody ain't discussed it, they already discussed it with you. You're in the dark. And a lot of people, they get this information. You know what we got to do? We got to tell that European who we are, what we about. He's the one colonized you. At what point you don't know, you don't know who you are. You the one that didn't know. Go ahead, sister. Give her the mic. You know, we need to get over our ego and understand that we've been out to lunch. You know, let's get over yourself.
It's quite interesting that you said that because a lot of the things that's going on today, a lot of people think that it just started.
Exactly.
And it's been going on for so long that they pretty much had this in the bag for generations and generations. The technology, the education, everything. And now it's just like coming out to certain people and they're like, oh, they're just starting this, or they're doing this to us now. They've been doing this to us
all the time. All the time.
Before we were even born.
You know, it's sort of like they've been keeping our people's keisters like forever, right? And it's like gotten to the point where they used to, you know, kick our keisters with size 9, then size 10. But when it got up to size 22 and 24, we start feeling it. You know, and they start recognizing they're losing weight. You know, they was looking in the mirror, checking out, you know, put on these new jeans and stuff like that. You know, they turn to the side, like this. And they notice that they're assless, right? What the hell? Cheeks is going, right? Then they start seeing boot prints. Now they're complaining. And then they start noticing that, now I know where the pain came from. And so what it really means is people finally waking up.
But you know what?
Not to be confused with, it was going on all the time. Go ahead.
You know what? Even though they're waking up, because so many are still asleep, it's unfortunate that it's giving them more airtime to keep on making other detrimental plans to destroy the people. So it's like, well, as long as y'all stay asleep and as long as y'all stay ignorant, then we keep adding more destruction.
It's exactly that.
So now while that's happening, the people are still saying, because they're starting to feel it, like you said, they're starting to feel it. It's like, wait a minute, they're doing this to us. That no, you're giving them, the more that you stay ignorant, you're giving them ample time to continue.
Exactly, to entrench inquisition operations that we, as a people, went in denial. Meaning that when you really study our people sociologically and don't take a biased position, because we love our people, and you stop making excuses for them, what was it really about our people? They were so busy for so many generations trying to please the European slave masters and trying to be good Christians so they wouldn't get their asses beat, that they actually started believing that they were Christians. Instead of that the Christians conquered them, who were really Constantinians hiding behind the name Christians. And they've been hanging, lynching, stealing, raping them for decades and a couple of centuries. It didn't just begin. And it's just that in the real world of operations, the nations of the world are starting to turn against Rome. And Rome in desperation are accelerating their inquisition operations where it's becoming obvious that they've been kicking these people's asses. And so the people can't deny it anymore. They're sacrificing, they're poisoning their children. They're kicking doors down with no court order, taking people's children because they're stock, and they're being forced to look at the fact, not that it wasn't unknown, they wasn't accepting, because they was lying to themselves and lying to people, talking about, well, see, we've got this divine contract between Jesus and the Lord and our baptism of our holy matrimony before the face of God. And here's my certificate of marriage to prove it. It's a bank bond. Get over yourself. And the marriage certificate is a bank bond with the postal Rome claiming the eggs in the womb, including the fallopian tubes. Get over yourself. It had nothing to do with Jesus, God in heaven, or anything else. Like they always been that. You just was in denial because you're so busy trying to be a good Christian in the eye of the slave master because you wanted him to give you a peanut butter sandwich or a pig foot on Sunday. And, because the ones who wasn't pretending to be good Christians wasn't getting a pig foot. And this became a culture with us. It's a culture of hypocrisy, a culture of denial, a culture of kissing buns of Europeans, and it became our alleged spiritual reality. Fake religion, dogma, and it became cultivated amongst us. And the deal of it is, so to justify yourself, because you're contributing to your own enslavement, you got to blame it on Jesus. So you got to throw the Jesus thing in there, knowing that it had nothing to do with him. Even though the book that they give you saying that he was a Jew, you will lie along with the rest of them saying he's a Christian. Though the book that you keep saying that came from him is that he's Christian, the book said he's a Jew. Then even, they start talking about he's white Jesus and stuff. The book even tells you about his grandmother, Ruth the Moabitess. She's Moabite, and so is he. Moabite's an ancient name for Arakanans, or what you call Moors today. People with hair like lambs or skin like burnished brasses, it's burnt in the oven. And they'll put a pale Roman up on the wall in all of these churches that they call black churches and call him Jesus. Knowing they're lying. It doesn't even take scholarship. And they put it on their babies. Now everybody's beginning to suffer for real. They can't hide it. That's kind of like the consciousness that's coming about. And we're not just talking about the cosmological truth of the Aquarian lights coming in, the actual operations in the heavens for real, where no darkness is allowed. You know what I mean? So it's not just written in prophecy, it's written in the stars. And the wise men deal with the Ephraimites, and he already knows to chart the heavens. And so, that true religion is cosmology. So even while the priesthood, the imams, and the rabbis will lie to the people and say that true religion is not cosmology. If we're celebrating Ramadan, right, and we're going to fast, right, what do they study and look for? The movement of the moon. Cosmology. If they're looking for the Passover, Easter, etc., movement of the moon and Venus, which is called crescent and the star, cosmology. They say, well, that's that Muslim stuff, that's that Muslim stuff. No, that belongs to the world. That is the workings of nature. So once you start getting real, and start looking at all of this is based on the transits of the sun, the eclipses of the sun, through the ethers, or what you call the heavens. And all holidays are based on cosmological movement. And, even when you're talking about the so-called political holidays, say 4th of July, that ain't really the day of independence for them. We're talking about the second, dealing with the political activity, but you're dealing with the heliacal rising of Sirius from behind the sun. That's our holiday. And so when you deal with ancient Sanskrit, right, which they will call Hindustani Sanskrit, he burns. Even the issue of the philosophy and the personification anthropomorphic display of the operations of the pineal gland, etc., referencing Krishna, where they get what is called the Christ degree. That's where Christ comes from Krishna, right? You're dealing with he burns. So Halid is Sanskrit, which means he burns, or the blue one, or the dark one. This is why the anthropomorphic figure of Christ or Krishna is dark blue or dark ebony, etc. And they call him the dark one. And so this is where in religion they get the Christ degree, which is actually the activation of the pineal gland. See, so even the persons who claim to be Christians will not tell you the real truth, that that's where it originates from, ancient Sindh. You know what I mean? And that they are really doing a dialectical operation of the study of the ancient Ibri, Urdu, etc., Hindustan, Sindh, Karo. So they don't want people to know that that is our culture and not theirs, if you get the point. So when you know the real history and culture, you're not spooked up. So when you study that, you already know that Islam, what they're calling Christianity, and Judaism all come from that same cosmological origin culture. Now, scholars know that. So once you know these things, you're no longer naive. If you don't know that history, you get all spooked up and think that these so-called different religions are different gods type thing, when they're just simply different linguistic versions of the very same thing, of the transits of the sun in the sky. Muhammad cannot be painted. Why cannot Muhammad be painted? Because Muhammad is the northern and the southern hemisphere of the universe from the view of the earth. It is so many stars that it's impossible to paint them. Not just that, you can't even count them. Therefore, you can't paint Muhammad. Now, that's the real truth. However, scholars will not tell people that, will they? They'll tell people that Muhammad is the one who come after Yahshua to you see, so scholars know a truth that the masses don't get, do they? So being Muslim, you know that you're given the science. Now, Muslims, where you interchange the O and the U, get the rituals. Muslims get the science. Do you understand? Though it's the same, basically. The fetus of woman that produced from the womb of woman. So people are born Muslim. It's not a religion in the sense that people think. It is actually the being coming from the womb of woman, just like a fetus. So you can't be made Muslim. You're born Muslim. You know, so these fundamental truths, they don't want the masses to know because then they can't do the mind control and then take your finance and then tell you that Jesus or Muhammad got a bank account at Chase Manhattan and you're giving tithing or charity. You know, while the rulers got golden threads in their turbans and the Christians got golden threads in their mitres, fish heads. And in secret, all of them are operating in partnership, enslaving the masses. How about that truth? That's why you're here. And all of them, for the most part, have been enemies of the prophets. Wasn't no mystical devil. It wasn't no devil. It was the same people that later wrote hadith. I'm going to tell you what the prophet said and what he didn't say. Who ran Jesus out of Galilee? Wasn't no mystical devil. It was the priesthood. And it was them who delivered them to the hands of Rome, pretending they weren't colluding with Rome. The story continues. Same pattern. Give Dr. Naila the mic, please. You know, and a point that I'm making is that scholars know all this stuff. You know, the deal of it is to bring this knowledge to the common people who've been spookified by all these people in the name of Allah and Jesus. You know, and taking the widow's pennies. Oh yeah. They themselves know the truth and they hinder the little ones from coming in. Now you understand why Yeshua at the age of 12 was down in the temples disputing with them priests who were doctoring of the law. They call them doctors of the law. Pharisees and Sadducees, lawyers and attorneys, attorneys that you're dealing with today, who've been screwing you. And the revs and pastors who got a bunch of sheeple. They got cashmere coats and the sheeple is sheared in the corner of the stable, shivering, waiting for Jesus, the warmth of the sun, to give them a blessed coat. Or the blanket in the manger. You see what that really means? Yeah, right. They're the problem and never been charged. Go ahead, Dr. Maria.
Just what you're talking about, some of the stuff that people don't know. Like a lot of people don't know in terms of the Bible and its authorship about the fact that many scholars say that the Copernicus Piso family were really the authors of the New Testament. They were aristocratic Roman family.
Yes.
Charged with.
In fact, yes, true.
During that.
Repeat that because this is write this down because this is important for people to do research. These are very important things or facts that you'll get at the House of Reawakening Minds. So repeat that, Dr. Naila.
Right. The Copernicus, Capernicus, Piso, Piso family. If you look up the Piso family, you will find historically that they are the ones attributed with the authorship. They're an aristocratic Roman family attributed with the authorship of the New Testament. You know, and they actually, created the characters, the Marys, the apostles, and all of them.
And that would be the anthropomorphic presentment of dynasties, places, and powers.
And the other thing I wanted to make out as a quote, I wanted to share a quote from, it's supposedly from Pope Leo X. And some have heard this. It says, "How well we know what a profitable superstition this fable of Christ has been for us." This is Pope Leo X.
And they all know it, which means the priesthood know that they created a dogmatic system consciously. It did not evolve by misinterpretation. It evolved by design from the priesthood for mind control and to conquer the masses.
Absolutely.
To conquer the world. Hiding behind the integrity of the prophets whom they murdered. Now, point being made is this is not unknown by priesthood and scholar and imams and rabbis. Will they teach it? They will not, because it's sort of like them conversos said to Malcolm when he wouldn't take the payoff in Harlem, and they knew that he was going to tell about the history of the Temple of Islam and the sellout and what the French Muslims schooled him, and he would not take the payoff. And the password that they said before they murdered him was, "Get your hand out my pocket," which is a signal they already knew that they are fraud, and that if Malcolm didn't take the payoff, that he was going to tell. So they murdered him. And then again, that's the real history. Even though we know that the CIA was involved and that actually some of the shots came from up in the balcony in holes that were placed in the walls, because they set the place up before they even had the convention. This is why they delayed it when he came. And this is why the so-called bodyguards conveniently disappeared.
All the shots.
And then they won't tell the real truth about Malcolm, that he found out about Noble Drawley, that Elijah Muhammad was an addict in the Moorish movement. And they hide the pictures of him with his Moorish fez on. And that J. Edgar Hoover and Calvin Coolidge set up COINTELPRO. Over 500 people to follow him. He was backing with his army and navy. And as soon as he got millions, they infiltrated and undermined the movement. That's called the Great Sellout. And all the politics that involved with that. And so all of your major so-called black organizations began between 1930 and 1934. That's a documented fact. And all of these people know that these people are Moors. That's what Malcolm found out. And it took a blue-eyed French Muslim to school him. Don't come over here because you made the highs with that black and white language. That's slave language. To you, Maghreb is evening salat. To the rest of the world, Maghreb is Morocco, the most extreme west. Brother, you left home.
Yep.
Rude awakening. Now keep in mind, scholars all do this all the time, that Maghreb is not just evening salat. The extreme west. You're standing on the Maghreb. Great Masonic secret. And all the scholars know it, all the imams know it. That's why a lot of so-called Muslims are uncomfortable with Moorish science. They don't want them Muslim brothers and sisters and believers who they got as well-dressed
Camouflage.
people thinking that they understand nationhood,
Camouflage.
finding out the real history of this stuff. It gets ugly. Now that's the uncomfortable truth. But it is what it is. So you have to come to a place like this, like the House of Reawakening Minds, where people do real research and will just simply go against the grain and tell you the truth. But this information is supposed to be given to you in the Moorish Divine National Movement anyway, of which we are part of the Moorish Divine National Movement. It is worldwide. It's not some little club.
Islam.
This must be understood by you. You know what I mean? As an example, it's like a lot of people think that, or a lot of Europeans don't know. I was on the megabus going to Washington, D.C., Capitol Heights, to do a lecture, which I do periodically at Everlasting Life. And I was on the megabus, and the woman stopped the bus. The driver stopped the bus, came back, and I was sitting about 2 rows from the back. And she said, "You're Taj Tarik Bey?" I said, "Yes." She said, "I'm so grateful that you ride my bus. Me and my friends, we look at your videos all the time over my house, even the children do. And I just want you to know I'm honored with the work that you do. Keep up the good work, and I'm going to make sure that you get to Washington very safely." And she went back up and started the bus up, going to Washington. She was European. You know, so don't think they don't know.
Yeah, they know.
The deal with, and that's not a new experience for me. It's not when I was doing classes in New York, in Harlem, at the theater. A lot of European so-called Jews would come to the class regularly, backing up what we're saying and contributing information and stuff for years. It's no big deal. When I was doing roundtable years ago in the late 80s and early 90s, you know, a wealthy European woman who writes for Higher Truth magazine. Some of you know them, her, if I do research, you know, if I say, but maybe not be fair for me to say her name. But she was a wealthy European from Haddonfield, New Jersey, and a writer and an anthropologist for Higher Truth magazine. She come to the roundtable, you know. What do you think about the problems that some of the European, or she would say white sovereignty groups, I said, slow down, stop right now. First of all, they're not white. Now back up. And she said, well, the problems that some of them are having when they complete the processes, because at the time we were talking about HMOs and site drafts and affidavits to the transportation department, because the Europeans know the real history, you know, because it's been ongoing that the European middle class is being attacked, i.e. dissolved or sacrificed or thrown under the bus.
Yep.
All right, and so I said, what's your nationality? She said, well, white. I said, you're not white. She said, well, my mother is German and my father's Polish. Something like that, right? And I said, in reality, you already know your nationality is your mother. You know, the genetic claim of the daddy being the dominant is a false. And so you know that. So you're German. Now, so when the Europeans claimed to be white people under the Whittemore Party in 1854 with the Knights of Columbus Ku Klux Klan oath of 1854 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is really Shakamoxon, and Chicago, Illinois, which is the sister city of Chicago, which is the sister city of Mecca, i.e. it is Mecca, and dealing with the triangle trade route that is ancient there. And they agreed to be white people, you gave up your birthright too. So therefore you cannot use the Constitution to defend your claim because you're not a party to it. And she cried, hugged me, and says, I never looked at it that way. I said, it's very simple. That's why I'm here at the round table. You know. But the deal of this, and it's back to the issue, this is the same principle, whereas the Moors taken out of their right of estate by claiming Negro, black, and colored, the Europeans lost their birthright politically, claimed to be white people. However, under the hegemony operations, they had artificial political protection that once this game of false, blind faith fiat starts to dissolve and collapse, they no longer have protection. It must be put into context, mustn't it? So you must understand the politics. You know, and so years ago, a writer named Peter Moon wanted to do an interview with me. He wrote a book on synchronicity and another about the Moors. And there's another one, Richard Smith, whatever his name is. Europeans are telling a lot of Moorish history and truth. Why? Because the middle class is being dissolved. Another one in recent years is, I forget the background writers, those who really doing the research, and their spokeswoman is Anna Von Rees, who's telling a lot of history truth. You know, and Dee, remember like a couple years ago, and in recent conversations with yourself and myself, when I'm over your house eating oodles or noodles, hors d'oeuvres with good stuff in it. You know, which I'm looking forward to. Anyway, and we talk about Anna Von Rees and a lot of information that she's dispensing we have to remind ourselves that although she's telling a lot of truth, they're still trying to claim the estate.
Yeah, you read that book, right?
Now the other deal, and have you heard this lately? You know, they've been putting pressure on her now, and the federal operations of pseudo de facto government are now doing investigation in all of the different organizations that have been claimed to be Indians and dismissing their claims because they're not Indians.
Right. That's because
Not only that, because Indians false in the first place. And then they've been using this Indian tribal thing to claim the lands that really can't be transferred to them. So all of the political shenanigans that have been going on for years, and one of the things that they mentioned, but they didn't say her name. When you look at the federal investigation stuff, they say, and this woman in Alaska who claims to be a judge, who is not Indian, and that they have been transferring funds, actually to China through Germany,
right.
with collecting funds. So a lot of things is going on with that, but we already knew a lot of that stuff. You know, so I'm just throwing that at you because you know we're gonna talk later, right?
They're trying to they're trying to start a bank. And they want you
Yeah, that's again, there you go.
Yeah.
Now I'm not knocking it because it's like everything, like Drawley said, I'm gonna make the European tell you the truth because Anna is telling a lot of truths in the history. However, keep in mind, just like we say right here, remember, Europeans are not Americans.
Where did the Indian thing come from?
All right, let's look at this. Fact. And this is fact. The first of the Moors that were called Indians in the Western Hemisphere are what is called later Dominica, Caribe, and Arawak, and Taino. Not so much the Taino, but the Arawak.
Before that.
No, there's no.
Yeah.
They were trying to take over the trade routes of the Moors.
This is before that. I'm talking way before that.
Indian?
Yeah, before when the people started moving from the continent here, they were before even the so-called Indians.
All right, now let's look at this. No, that's where the Europeans start creating the narrative of history of the Moors coming into the Western Hemisphere, saying that we came across the Barren Straits from Asia. And so the narrative is that the first Indians came to North America, or that's a false narrative.
Right.
Now, fact. The designation being popularized in history books is the Europeans trying to take over the spice trades of the Moors and the gold and porcelain trades of what is called the Old Silk Road. They could not go across the Red Sea and the Med because of Calpe. Now, Calpe is what the Europeans advertised in the insurance company as the Rock of Gibraltar.
Right.
The Rock of Gibraltar is not Gibraltar, it's Gibra al-Tariq,
Right.
which is the mountain, Arabic, the mountain of Tariq, the Moorish general,
Right.
because that's a Moorish fort that's been there for hundreds of years, which is Calpe, right? And so they had to navigate around South Asia, that's now called Africa, Cape Hope, to try to get to Madagascar, and Sindh, that they write in history later, is India. And so the intent was taking over the spice trade of the Mauryan, the ancient Silk Road of the Mauryan Nanda Gupta dynasties, which are Moorish dynasties, in Sindh, etc. And so when you go into the war records and the shipping log records of Europe, you'll find that even when they're talking about Amerigo's Vespucci, he sails from the Moorish city of Cadiz to check out the navigational mapamundis of the Moors who guided by the stars through the rudder and sextant. Now you understand the rudder and sextant principle? all right? Navigating the hemisphere of the location of the stars in relationship to the horizon of the waters, sailing at night, ET, that's Moorish culture. So the deal of it is, this is cut and dry. Now, when you check out Christopher Colombo's records, shipping logs, you'll find the Pedro the Moor navigated the Nino. The Europeans logically didn't know the maps of the world the way the Moors did, and Pedro or Moor navigated the Nino. These are documented facts. Instead of taking them to Sinde and Madagascar, which is where their goal was, he took them to the last of Atlantis Island, which is now called Haiti, later split by the Europeans and called the island of Archipelago, those string of islands, which is last of Atlantis Islands before Atlantis sunk, and it's called, they split it and called it Dominica, which is still Haiti. Salam, people, and stuff like that. And the Taino, the Arawak, and the Taino Carib tribes of Moors is the first ones in the Western Hemisphere that were designated Indians by the Europeans. Not any of the Moors of North America or Greenland. It was on the last of the Atlantis Islands of the Carib Moors that they called Indians of the West, because they was trying to go to Hindustan of the East, and Pedro deliberately took them to the Atlantis Islands, and they didn't even hit the mainland. And so this is how the term West Indians had its life. Check the records. So when you do with the Europeans, they'll talk about the Indians of North America. That is BS. We were not Indians. We were not called Indians. The first designation of that false term Indians were given to the Carib and Arawak Moors of the string of islands that you now call Haiti, Dominica, etc. It didn't even apply. They wrote that into history. It didn't even damn exist. All scholars know that. So that's how we became called Indians. There's no such people, no such history. North America is not India, and all scholars know it. Even the Sindh on the other side ain't Indians. And as Javed said, was in 1941, 1947, they made that up. And it's the German Dutch masters that made that up, and that's their company, ain't the people. But it's adopted as a corporate operation after Britain split Sindh, and so that now you got Pakistan and India, which neither one of them is that, even. But go ahead, good brother.
Yeah. I agree with
Give him the mic, give him the mic, give him the mic. Islam.
I agree with you, but you said...
Give him the mic, please.
You said Columbus.
Yeah.
Same time period in history, according to the record, I made the fraction.
Yeah.
Look, the word was the Gamma. He went to Hindustan, Goa.
Exactly.
That not belong to whatever you said, Western Indian, now. He went to Goa to research for the Silk Road.
Is exactly correct.
Silk Road. Where is the Silk Road? How many people know?
Exactly.
It's located in India. Silk Road.
Yeah, Silk Road.
He actually want to go to the Silk Road.
Exactly.
By mistake, he went to Goa.
Yep.
That means Vasco da Gama,
Yes.
not Columbus.
Yeah, we know that.
So, many times, I have this all record. If someone
Oh,
wants,
yes.
I have the record.
Exactly. And this is again why it's important. Now, what I would like for you to share in the future, sometime when you get a chance.
All right, thank you.
Bring the history, bring some of the notes of the history of the Mauryan non-Gupta dynasties, because a lot of people here don't even know their history in Sindh. Dr. Maya, give her the mic. What scholars know, but this is important for people to really know that the Morris Divine National Movement has a Rotarian complexion. And they really need to learn the world history. That's why Drew Ali said, he said, so that these Moors would not be closed-minded, he said, the nations of the world got your history. He said, prepare yourselves to take your places among the affairs of men. That's international diversity venue. Why do some of these grand chiefs keep acting like no Drali and teach that? Well, we don't need to argue with them. We're making sure these people get this information. Not substance, not no beliefs, some substance. Go ahead, Dr.
So, two things real quickly. A friend of mine has a sister who, she shared a story about her sister going over to, I guess, Hindustan, what we call
Yes.
India, to do some studies. She's in the medical field, doctor,
Yes.
medical field. And she said that she was over there, I guess the nationals were indifferent to her and nasty. It was, and then finally one of them said to her, this is your customs, I think they were talking about like some martial arts and some things there.
All that stuff.
And he finally admitted to her, it was almost like, because she didn't know who she was, they were very indifferent to her until one of them admitted to her, we're just keeping this stuff basically because this is what you all brought to us.
Yes, not just that. The real deal is that they go over there with that converso, self-righteous, fake idol God culture that they keep claiming to be Jesus culture, which is really Constantinism. And they're arrogant and self-righteous. That's really why the people were rejecting them. Because they not only, they come with a false culture blaming it on Jesus that has nothing to do with him, lying. They come with a self-arrogant, self-righteousness like Jesus made them and they got to come somewhere else and Christianize everyone. And they don't know that the people already know your history and know that you're fake. And so,
Wanted to say about Haiti. Recently, I've been looking at, I guess, Tariq Nasheed's some things about his documentary on Haiti, 1804,
yeah.
and looking at, I actually in particular was looking at an interview that Rock Newman did with he and I forgot her name, Elizo Donato. She's from Haiti. But what was interesting is that Haiti has probably one of the only supplies of something called iridium, which came from a meteor that crashed like millions of years ago and created the mountains in Haiti. And they were talking about how the United States has the fourth largest embassy that they have, or consulate that they have in the world, is in Haiti. That's where they use to store all of this. They're taking iridium, which they use in space travel because of its fire retardants. They're taking gold. And
this is why they put that bomb off in the water that they called the tsunami.
Right.
The tsunami, which wasn't a tsunami. They bombed, and many people in foundations have been trying to force them to give them gold contracts to.
They said that they're digging holes, large, massive holes, taking out the resources, storing them and moving them by night. They leave the holes open after they just, go and rape and pillage. But they said that they're on a tectonic plate where they said Venezuela's oil is like a teacup to their ocean of oil. That's how much oil is actually in Haiti. So now it makes sense why there's been so many attacks, so-called, they call them natural disasters, but they're the disaster that has happened. And it seems like Haiti's been on their radar because of the fact that they were some of the ones that really
look at what you know about iridium.
Right.
Then look at the movie Black Panther, Titanium, Black Panther.
Well, iridium, Haiti it has massive
They give
A mountain
you-
of iridium because of the, like meteors.
Yeah, meteorite.
Right, meteorite that's
Yes.
created the mountains here. And I don't know if a lot of people know that. You know what I mean? We always look at these things and we think that they're natural disasters, but
Yeah.
that's all the more reason for, the U.S. and others to
And
go in and
remember,
try to,
and when we say U.S., keep in
the
mind,
U.S.
you're talking the Pope
Absolutely.
politics, not unlike the Emancipation Proclamation, is to keep the deception going, making the people think they were free while they're still suffering Inquisition operations. The nationalization set forth by Noble Drew in 1913 is to turn that trend around, and is the first serious political platform of both religious and political operations to make that distinction and actually put an impact on it. So I want to show that with you. Now, because of time period, I'm going to come over there and I'm going to go into ex parte nonium. All right, something I have on there. I want to make a point to you, for the consular issue. And
That's how the Clinton Foundation got started. After they had the earthquake in Haiti, they created
Children and everything.
did all that for them. Murdered the children,
Yeah.
human body resources. The Ashkenazis came in there and stole, killed the children and everything else. They eat the children. Rituals, drink their blood. People are nasty people, man. Better wake up.
but it's not new, is it?
Ashkenazis, Edomites, Canaanites, Khazarians, they're some nasty people now. Halloween, all the children they had caged up for Halloween, using them for rituals, and people go out there and celebrate Halloween. You kidding me? No, it's fun. No, it ain't fun. Some children in cages and they don't think it's fun. People are asleep, man. Gotta wake up. I know what it's gonna take. Young people. Some of you. I'm getting old man.
Doesn't matter.
Like, as long as I can.
What'd you say?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
I told them something young people. I said, I'm an old man. I said, I'm gonna fight as long as I can.
It's up to you.
I'm fighting. I'm already fighting. I'm old. Let the young people get up there. That's what we're teaching
Doesn't
them.
matter.
Yeah, it matters. You too. You're another one sitting back there asleep. Wake up.
Well, I can't find it. I must have put it in one of my files because I have it actually on one of my other computers. Now, so get used to this and write this down because this is very important in relationship to consular operations, because people who really, and this is back to both sides of the operations, of the occupiers of the nation and people who are of the nation who should have been teaching you these things. And so we're dealing also with the period of operations with the Emancipation Proclamation and the commercial mercenary war. And you're dealing with this case. About that time. Now, point in fact. Now I'm going to give you a synopsis of the nature of the case. Basically, It had to do with a few people that were arrested, charged with treason, sedition, a whole bunch of other stuff like that during the so-called Civil War, which is really a mercenary commercial war. But that's not the issue that I want to present to you. The understanding the operations of the military, admiralty, maritime piracy operations brought onto the land jurisdiction by the United States Service Corporation operatives, by the United States Corporation company operatives who've been guising themselves as the United States. Are we clear? Of the Amity and Commerce flag with the gold fringe around it, military operations on the land, which these are really military trading by tribunals of human trafficking. Are we clear? So much of the battling that people are doing today as they begin to become conscious has to do with the operations of these foreign Europeans who've been pretending to be Americans, waging war on you, the people of the land, in the name of being government. Are we clear? Now, this is fact. This is fact. In the case Ex parte Milligan, 1863, it is established by stare decisis. And stare decisis is established law dealing with what you call maxims of principle under constitutional principle. That when the common law, and this is very important, so keep in mind your knowledge of common law according to jurisprudence. The common law maintenance of the common law courts under constitutional principles by the civilian population, i.e. the people, are we clear? Maintained by the people, that the military tribunals by law have no operative jurisdictional right to operate. They must shut down and close. Are we clear? Are we clear of what's happening? Now take this in consideration with our illustrious Prophet Noble Ali, with Act 1 of the Divine Constitution and Bylaws of the Moorish Temple of Science, i.e. Moorish Holy Temple of Science, unincorporated, and including passed down to the corporate operations of the Moorish Science Temple of America after July the 20th special meeting by the Prophet Noble Ali, and the adoption under Herb's law of the religious affidavits for securing and protection of the people under the principle of law, order, and governmental principles, i.e. call that religious affidavit since 1928. Moorish Divine National Movement via the Moorish Temple of Science put in power to make laws, enforce law, they live according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and it is known by the members of the Moorish Temple of Science, etc. That is their charge to do. And that with the enforcement of that Constitution, that the Moors' proper venue for remedies in any matters of persons or property is maintained in the common law court of diversity, i.e. Article 3, enforcement of that Constitution, as stated in the divine warning by the prophet for the nation. Thus, the existence of Article 3, common law court, under the civilian authority of the people, recognizing that the sovereignty principles of divine birthright law that revert back to the people. You can see the amendments. You can look at Amendment 9 of that Constitution. That it is the duty and the obligation, responsibility of nationals and citizens to enforce that Constitution. Therefore, and thereby, with the activation of the existing Article 3 courts, i.e. the diversity of consular court, then military tribunals by law must close down. However, and with qualification, we must be competent and consistent in our activities and maintaining that principle of the common law. And so you go also into the divine constitutional bylaw and it says, being Moorish Americans, you are part and parcel of this said government and must live the life accordingly. Put in context of time, is it obvious? I'm presenting that to you to think about too.
Yeah, but he said we must teach them, you know.
Those things necessary is called civics, isn't it?
Yes.
But this is important because this can be used in any law argument in any of these commercial venues of these foreign operatives who've been pretending that those military tribunals are courts. This is proof that they're not, and it's proof of the obligation of the people to maintain the common law venues. They're supposed to close down. So you see again, where a lot of these people who were put in power to make law and enforce law have actually been breaching the people, but they've been holding them seats, haven't they? I say this in closing, caveat emptor. I thank you all for coming out here to the House of Reawakening Minds. I thank Dr. Naila Gillen for maintaining this venue. Thank you, Tamara, for doing the camera and doing a lot of work in the background. And I thank you all for supporting the House. I thank you for building and making happiness for all of us. And we're going in the future going into the applied science of the number 9 because all sisters need to know that. But again, Dr. Naila, would you like to make a closing statement? Give her the mic.
Only statement I'd like to make is that we will not have class next Friday, but we will have Father Hannibal with us on the following Friday, which I believe is the 30th, if I'm not mistaken, the 30th. So we will not have class next week, which would be whatever next week is, the 23rd?
Yes.
But we will have class on the 30th. We have 5 Fridays this month, so, you know, we know what Thanksgiving is all about, but we do realize that some people spend that time with their families,
Yes.
and some people are traveling. I don't care what they say they don't do. So we are not having class.
Yeah, because you know them turkeys don't be working on turkeys.
Absolutely. So we are not having class next Friday. So, you know, enjoy whatever it is you do on that time, and please, you know, come back the following Friday when we have Father Hannibal Bey, who will be with us on the 30th. We also want to encourage you. We want to thank you, those of you who support us. Some of you support us and, you know, never get to come here, you know, in person, but you support us, you know, with your prayers, your thoughts, and with your finances, and we appreciate that because this is the only thing that we do. We don't really have a lot of other things going here right now that bring in any type of finance to keep this going, but your support, and so we're very appreciative of that. And we hope to be expanding, you know, in the very near future and bringing along some other things. We actually will be expanding, and there's going to be some other things that, you know, Tamara's up there putting her hands up because she's got some exciting stuff she's about to do with the young people, and some other things that I'm going to bring back Reiki and medication.
Oh, great.
Reiki and meditation. We're going to bring that back because a lot of people have been asking for it. So we're just going to be looking to expand. It's just that we're getting into the winter months, and so it may be, you know, there are times when we won't be able to do anything. Like we had a snowstorm here, literally. It's hard to believe that yesterday we had 3 inches of snow covering.
You know, the engineered snow? Yeah.
Well, it came down and it affected a lot of things, and so we want to, you know, we will let you know when there will not be class, perhaps because of weather. We hope that we won't have a lot of snow snow, related cancellations, but if the weather is really bad, we're
Yeah.
not going to, we wouldn't
Yeah.
have people coming out, and you probably wouldn't come out anyway. So we're just gonna, keep your eyes open to our page. We
Yes.
thank you. Tell other people about our Facebook page, because all of the videos are kept on our Facebook page, which is House of Reawakening Minds. You can go back and look at it in the archive. I know many of you watch it on YouTube. That's not us. We're not the YouTube people. We will have our YouTube page up and running soon, and then you can go to our page, since it's our venue, and get our videos. But for the meantime,
in the future, the books.
Right.
In their finalized and
Right.
many of the unpublished versions that many of you are familiar with, but they're not completed versions. And then other stuff that had not been published previously. Also, I want to update you all. That past week I just came back from Tampa, Florida, at the Moorish Convention. Very progressive. So I came from the land of flowers. And the movement of the activity of enforcing the Constitution, as the prophet said, Article 2, which is diversity of nationality. We, as you already know, Dr. Naima, because I think around 60 returned green cards came through this house. And I think, as last report, somewhere around 80 some odd returns. And all of the substitute bays, or what you call the governors of all the corporate states under the jurisdiction of the United States Service Corporation operatives, have been put on notice with the activation of Article 3 court. And that's what those cards are returned for, including different nation states that have returned. So they've all been put on notice. And this is fundamentally in the nature of the common law principle, because it is the duty of the nationals and the citizens to enforce that common law. And activities of a lot of active Moors around the country are so strong that even though we have the convention at Tampa, Florida, land of flowers, and Empress Nora and her husband, Brother Nasir, hosted it down there at Humanity Park. Very beautiful atmosphere, palm trees and exotic plants all over the place, as you all know. As soon as you get down there, land of flowers, the foliage changes, like being on a tropical island. And they said, winter's coming in. Hey, it was like summer to me. I was wear the suit and stuff, do my thing, Please. I went in that suitcase, got that white, worked it. Hey, you know what I mean? So, it was beautiful. And at the same time, the park was packed. It was packed. Beautiful. They had vendors and everything. It was just, it was cooking fish out. They had, we had it going on. You understand? And entertainment. Yes, it was really beautiful. The activity is so strong that in four other parts of the country, the convention was going on at the same time. And so, Consul General Shirley Moore is going to be making a documentary report on both the videos and the pictures that has been gathered from around the country while the convention is going on. And as you know, Light Tajiri, his sister, is doing a lot of work in the background. She was having a convention at her domicile. A whole bunch of Moors there. They were sending pictures. It's just beautiful. And of course, the work in the Shakamoxan territory in this region. Now that was Southeast region where I was. With Sharon Tracy Bay, who does a lot of work up in this area. And I salute them for the great work that they've been doing. And as I travel the country, for you all, I want you to know that when I go in different parts of the country, there's hundreds of Moors that are active that I'm familiar with, just like yourselves. So Every time I go in different parts of the country, I'll be dealing with hundreds of Moors that are active, and many of them have been activating the Lesson Book 14 actually for years. And so, like, you know, Sis was saying, there's an assumption that this stuff just began. It didn't just begin. What is happening is taking on another level of life with people who are coming into this movement and recognizing the information for what it is, i.e. coming in with your eyes wide open. And so with some people, it appears that this stuff is new. It's not new. What you find is a level of consciousness that's arising with people coming in with a level of consciousness, intelligence, activity, and research that are functioning with this information. And again, I want to give props to Sister Delilah Paseo for, you know, we work together on a lot of things. And, you know, we've been doing protocols of even mock court for years to bring people into the consciousness of jurisdictional challenge, the nature of jurisdiction, the aspects of jurisdiction. And so Dee started formulating and expanding on fundamental questions that we were doing in Great Seal anyway. And so she expanded on questions, and so I got with her and we expanded on the questions. We have actually a lot more questions and statements, but what we did, we kept it at like 108, i.e. 9, and start issuing them out to people so they could do open book tests on themselves on the principle of jurisconsult. You know what I mean? To help prepare the people for constitutional enforcement and civic instruction. And of course, it took off like wildfire. And a lot of sleepers among us came out trying to knock it and trying to knock Soleil Moore and a lot of other people that came into the movement, because a lot of them came directly from the church, but they came open-spirited and honorable and trying to get some work done. And a lot of envy and jealous and backbiting came out, but guess what? It took a life on its own, and a lot of people hung themselves out there that's going to be marked in history for being in opposition. This thing is very, very, very strong. And people are very, very, very active. And, you know, it's sort of like I can tell you, but I can't tell you because you wasn't there. But at the same time, I have the pleasure of dealing with, you know, people around the country. So if I go to California to American University or different places where I've spoken, I deal with hundreds of Moors who I'm familiar with and who are familiar with me the same way you are here. So, and I wish that you know, could see them and see the spirit of the people around the country that are actives. And so, by you not necessarily meeting them and the activities, sometimes people think in the different territories that they're the only ones working. Well, it's a lot of people been working this stuff for years and coming, you know, being enthusiastic that Moors are coming on and encouraging and getting work done. But this thing is like, it's really taking a life of its own, or say a revigoration of its own. So I want you to know that. And also, many of the Moors who were there send the greetings to you because they're enthusiastic to know your activities in this area. Now, the major convention of the meet and greet was on the day of the sun, day of Saturday. Now, on the day of the sun, the next day, I went back and at the park, and they had a lot of elders there that wanted to meet me. A lot of people who, you know, who wanted to meet me, who never met me in person. You know how people try to make you somebody that you're not. Well, I'm just stodgy guy with the cheap sneaks. Be truthful with you. So I went to see them, and they were real elders. I'm an elder. They're elders. And so they just wanted me to talk. They didn't care what I talked about. They just wanted me to talk. So I went into the Dungy case. Anyway, they were fired up. And I remember, and it was also this very influential woman, and she's a writer and a poet. And one of the brothers, you know, like, browbeat her to come. She didn't want to come. you know. Anyway, so she came, you know. But anyway, after she came, she was so fired up and impressed. And I was getting back in the car because I had to come back to the coach, you know. And time for me to leave, you know. So they was escorting me back to the coach, taking me back to the coach. And she said, wait a minute, I have a gift for you. And she gave me a poem that she wrote, this big poster, and she signed it for me and everything. And I got it put in the frame. And, you know, so a lot of people send their greetings to you all, and I send greetings to you all from them from around the country. And be assured that you got a lot of backup. So don't you think that you're operating on your own. And so even with a lot of the naysayers, the strength of these people coming into this activity now overrides them like, you know, like you say, when people come home chilling and going to get a peanut butter sandwich, they just came in from the movies and stuff and turn on lights and what? Well, they didn't know they had roaches. Yeah. turn on the light. It's sort of like that's with a lot of the naysayers and the trolls who want to find themselves dumb roaches as these people are waking up. Because they're going to be charged with the treason and the stagnation and the expurgatorius and prohibitorums that they have been practicing for Rome, pretending to love proper neutrality. Because these people are coming into this movement with their eyes wide open, and some of them are not happy about these people. You know, but however, we want to keep it cool like it is. But they're sending greetings to you all. And so what I say with you with that, have a grand evening. Thank you for coming out to the House of Reawakening Minds. Thank for the listeners for supporting the House, maintaining this House. Thank Dr. Naila for maintaining this venue. Thanks, Tamara, for doing the camera. And with that said, I say, have a grand evening. See you next time. Islam.